Okay, welcome everybody. So today is Tuesday. What's today? The 29th of January, 2019, and we're here. We have a special beginning to our meeting. We're here with the Pusheen Cats. Now, this is a team that just won the first Lego, it's actually the third, the Hudson Valley First Lego League STEM Championship that was held on Saturday, January 19th. You guys won, and now you're off to the next round, which is going to be at Dutchess Community College on February 9th. And you're going to present your project. So I know we're all looking forward to hearing about it. So why don't you guys take it away?
Hello, judges. We're the Pusheen Cats. I'm Shrihan. This is Sujay, Sanjana, Siri, and Advait. We are from all over Westchester County. Next.
Alright, FLL is an international program that sparks interest in young minds for science and technology through healthy competition. This is our third year doing this challenge, and we're really happy to say so.
Last year we advanced past the county and regional levels and made it to the internationals. And there we are proud to say that we won the second place research award. This year is our third year during FLL, and this is the Into Orbit season. And we won the county competition on January 19th, and we're preparing for regionals on February 9th. Let's take a look at our robot design.
Thanks. Alright, our robot is built with Legos, wheels, and sensors. We programmed it using the LEGO Mindstorms EV3 Education Edition. So the goal is to complete the missions on the board in a set amount of time, so as many missions as possible. And this is a robot design. It's a box-like structure that's stable and maneuvers around structures. And to complete our goal in a set amount of time, we're going to build attachments for our missions before we actually program them to a robot. And we'd now like to introduce our second aspect of FLL this year, which is our project or research.
Okay.
Alright, human exploration of space is exciting, who wouldn't want to go? But it comes with serious health problems. According to a 2016 Nature publication, 43% of Apollo astronauts who set foot on the moon died of heart disease due to space radiation. Our research shows that space radiation is the single biggest challenge for deep space exploration, including missions to Mars.
On Earth, we are greatly protected from radiation's harmful effects. However, deep space radiation, consisting of galactic cosmic rays and solar particle events, could cause acute radiation sicknesses, DNA damage, and cancer. Next.
To block such high-energy space radiation, shielding materials used on Earth are just not effective. We began to research how to minimize space radiation, such as active and passive shielding and biological countermeasures. So we wondered, can we create an even better radiation blocker? And if we did, can we use it on Mars? We started off by visiting the Intrepid Museum, speaking to astronauts, reading publications in scientific journals, and then started sharing our ideas with NASA scientists.
Through our research, we found that hydrogen-rich materials like polyethylene and water were very effective radiation shields, however, the hassle to carry from Earth. Newer materials like boron nitrate showed promise as neutron blockers, however, were not cost-effective. Martian dust, or regolith, could be used to build a habitat on Mars, however, has not been tested as a radiation shield. Our hypothesis was that, although regolith wasn't the best radiation shield, combining it with another material would make it more effective than each alone. To test our hypothesis, we used Alteris, a well-known radiation simulation tool developed by NASA. The average daily exposure on Mars is 1 millisievert per day, equivalent to getting 10 chest x-rays on Earth. Our goal...
Say that one more time. What's equivalent of 10 x-rays? 1 day?
The average daily radiation exposure on Mars is equivalent to getting 10 chest x-rays on Earth. Our goal was to reduce it to less than 0.5 millisieverts. With Alteris, we tested hundreds of different combinations, and finally, we found the combination that blocked the most radiation. Advait.
Thanks. Here are our results. First, we proved that the combination of regolith and polyethylene was more effective than the same amount of each material alone. Second, as the thickness of the combination increased, the effectiveness of the radiation shield increased as well. But our most groundbreaking observation was that at any given thickness, the combination of regolith and polyethylene was more effective than any other combination of materials tested. 45 centimeters of regolith and 45 centimeters of polyethylene lowered the radiation the most, dropping to a whopping 0.49 millisieverts per day, a huge reduction from the original radiation. We use regolith because of its abundance and strength, and polyethylene because it's cheap, effective, and has potential to be manufactured on Mars. These results not only surpassed our expectations, but were also way below NASA's permissible limits. A NASA scientist, Dr. Sheila Thibault, said that an experiment of this type has never been done before. Srihan.
Thank you. This is our habitat. As you can see, we implemented our shield into the walls of the Martian habitat to block radiation. We also included a hydroponics garden, which could be used for many purposes. Next.
Okay.
Right here. Our special thanks to Dr. Peter Guida, a pioneer in Martian regolith, College of William and Mary. Dr. Richard Kiefer, a radiation scientist at Brookhaven Lab, who was very impressed with our results and even recommended publishing in a scientific journal. And not to forget mentioning the various other NASA scientists we consulted, Drs. Thibault, Pucha, Jeevarajan, and Wu, who guided us through this fascinating journey.
FLL has impacted us tremendously with programming, time management, presentation skills, research process, respecting each other, and much more. We love FLL, and we have stimulated interest in many students in STEM-related activities. Inspired by us, 4 new FLL teams have formed in the past year. We are here today in hopes of igniting curiosity and to create awareness about this amazing opportunity.
Thank you for taking time out of your day to listen to our presentation for you. Have a nice evening.
That's amazing.
Thank you for coming. It really was amazing.
It's made me think, when I was a kid, I drew a whale, and I was so proud of myself.
All I can say is good luck at the internationals. Go.
And if you want a job in Newcastle, please, we'll take you now. We'll do a signing bonus.
I want to also give a shout out to your coach, who, it can't hurt to have is he Dr. Salam?
Yes.
It can't hurt to have a scientist as your coach. It works.
I'll
We have a bunch
second
of other
that. I
coaches.
was a junior FLL coach 3 years ago, and it definitely doesn't help to have a scientist, which I am not, as the coach for this activity. You guys put in an incredible amount of work. I know
Terrific.
how difficult it is to prepare for this and to do the presentation with the robotics and the scientific research as well. It's really impressive. Great job, you guys.
So are there a lot of scientists, are there a lot of parents who are scientists also? Behind
Every
this
other
team?
team is an IBM scientist.
So that's great.
Thanks to Chappaqua School District for making Bell School available in the first place for this competition.
It's great to hear.
Exactly. And the supervisor came by, actually.
Superintendent.
Superintendent, Chappaqua
Great.
Schools.
Right. All right. Can we take a picture with you guys?
Yes.
Sure.
Come on up, or we should
All
go
right.
down.
Yeah, we'll go down.
Go up.
Yeah, they're gonna come up. You guys come up. Yeah, my bad.
Coached by lawyers, I get this just as effective.
I know. Like I was a baseball coach.
Yeah.
Good. Those kids did.
All the way down.
Wait, we gotta get rid of these chairs.
Yeah.
Or let them sit in the chairs and you guys.
Yeah, why don't you guys sit in the chairs?
That's a good idea. Sit in the chair, guys. You gotta squeeze in here.
Squeeze down, squeeze down.
We'll stand behind you.
The reason we have so many chairs is we're having a meeting with another board tonight. This guy has a very strong grip. Watch his grip. Serious. All right, move it in a little bit so we have some of this.
Squeeze in just a little.
All right.
Just have to shift the chairs over there.
Move the chairs
Yeah.
closer.
All
It's
right.
getting close. There we go. This is what you call paparazzi.
Oh, Martin, you're gonna give me one of yours. Yeah, right in front. That's it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We should have them sign it when they're great scientists. We can say, we do that then.
Exactly.
Thank you so much.
All right, guys. Good night.
Thank you.
Take care, good job. You too, take care. There's a lot of chairs up here.
Congratulations, you guys. That's great. Good luck in the next round.
I took chemistry 3 times.
I took chemistry.
I took chemistry 3 times.
It's true about the whale, though. I did draw this whale. I was so proud of myself.
You still have it?
I don't know, I don't think so. We had all the little ports. This is where the water comes out.
Physics, yeah.
Thank you so much.
Take care, thank you.
Congratulations. Thanks.
Thank you, guys. Do you have a robot that collects taxes?
There's robots who can do our jobs.
Okay, welcome everybody to the, we're going to be having a joint meeting with the planning board, but first we're just going to start off with some announcements before we get started with our joint meeting. So let's see what we got here. February 2nd, free workshops at the Chapco Performing Arts Center. There's 3 of them. One is musical theater comedy workshop, musical theater workshop, which is empowerment through musical theater. Yes, you can. Workshop. And then a workshop regarding Frozen the musical. Actually, that one is on, they're all different dates. So the first one is February 2nd, the second one is March 2nd, and the third one is March 16th. That wasn't too confusing. We have the Chappaqua 4th Children's Lunar New Year Celebration. And that's Sunday, February 3rd from 1:30 to 4, also at the Performing Arts Center. Join us for the 4th Chinese New Year celebration for children. It's a free event, great for the whole family. Another event at Chapel Performing Arts Center is Junie B. Jones. The musical stars in a colorful, funny, fast-paced musical about new friends, new glasses, sugar cookies, the annual kickball tournament, and other various first-grade angst-ridden situations. That's February 9th from 2 to 3:30. Chapel Orchestra, Together in Music. That's Saturday, March 9th, also at the Chapel Performing Arts Center. And that's a special concert with our Chapel Orchestra and our Every Person is Connected committee for an interactive and inclusive family concert. Think Fit for Kids, the annual benefit, March 3rd at Club Fit in Briarcliff. And the last one I'll say is Wasted, the movie screening, hosted by Newcastle Sustainability Advisory Board and Chapel Performing Arts Center. Wasted, a story of food waste. Sunday, March 31st, 2 to 5, at the Chapel Performing Arts Center. If we didn't have the Chapel Performing Arts Center, we'd have nothing to do in this town. Should be obvious to everybody here. So some supervisors, I'll go quickly do a supervisor report. Our 4 spots on King Street have been restored due to the onset of winter. Operations have ceased until April 1st. We have our consultant here, Lou, that's you, from Sam Schwartz Engineering, is that it?
Yes.
And I didn't know what came after Sam Schwartz. And you're going to be talking also about checking some of our turning radiuses in downtown Chappaqua, making sure fire trucks can fit, also talking about turning Lower King into a 2-way street, and we'll be talking about that tonight. And our new electronic community sign is active. You can see it out there, and that's a great effort with the Chappaqua School District. We both have a sign on the side. They rotate. It's great working together for the benefit of the community. Tonight, we have on our agenda Chapaqua Crossing, whether we're going to grant a temporary certificate of occupancy for them to open. So we'll continue our public hearing tonight on that front. That one pole, which was on the corner of 117 and Roaring Brook Road, is now gone. That was something that was absolutely necessary for Lifetime Fitness to open. And tonight we'll be hearing from our traffic consultant about some of the construction that's going to take place, which is taking place whether Lifetime Fitness opens or not, but we just want to hear about how we're going to deal with that. And that's pretty much it for me. And now on to our Ministries Report with Jill Shapiro.
Thank you. The 2018-19 school taxes are due Thursday, the 31st, without penalty. Thursday is the last day to pay your second half school taxes. If you, as opposed to your bank, are responsible for paying, the taxes are due. The tax office will be open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. on Thursday, the 31st. We also hold post-dated checks. So if you haven't brought your check in, you can bring it in, leave it for us post-dated. If you choose to put it in the mail, please make sure you see the post office affix a United States Postal postmark to the envelope as proof of timely mailing. That's what we go by if we receive the check after the 31st. So that's very important. Also, our tax receipts are available online. For all property taxes paid in 2018, for those people that are getting a head start on their federal taxes, federal and state taxes. And last but not least, the RFP for a form-based code build-out analysis and secret review for the Chappaqua Hamlet The responses were due back on Friday. We received 4. We expect that we'll be reviewing the proposals over the next few weeks and setting up some interviews with the town board before awarding a contract.
Okay, thank you. We'd also like to welcome our new intern, Kira. So welcome to the town, and we appreciate your efforts so far. Thank you. Okay. So, should we start the hearing, or should we hold off? I don't know if we're getting a few more planning board members.
Yeah, I'm trying to rustle them up here.
So you want to do public comments? Let's do public comments, new business. So like every town board meeting, public comment, new business. Sure, come on up.
Hello, good evening. My name is Laura Whitlinger, and I live in Ossining on Cedar Lane. And my request tonight is very simple. I would like to ask that before building permits are issued for the Sunshine Home, that we have a public hearing in order to examine and get feedback on the data from the tests that have been going on for the past 6 months. To issue building permits before having a chance to review that data would be no different than announcing the winner of an election before all the votes are counted. And the reason why we have concerns about the water is because I want to remind you that in February of 2016, your town hydrologist stated there was not enough water, given a drought. In 2013, the attorney for the Sunshine Home sent a letter to the then town supervisor, I think Susan Gallagher, and to the mayor of Ossining and to the town supervisor of Ossining, stating that there was not enough water for the facility at the size it was, and that wells 2 and 3 were drying up, and they wanted water immediately. And 3, we just got the hydrology test back from another hospital that's going in around the corner, and neighbors' wells were impacted, some of them severely. So we want time to analyze the data, to check it out, and we would like that before the building permits are issued, just to keep it fair, because it's not right to give building permits without all the data in, without a time to be in. It looks like you were just like, well, this is something we have to do, and I know you're not like that. You guys are very, very detail-oriented, and you're very thoughtful when you take these things on. So I would like to ask that you give us the same amount of time to do so. And I want to thank you very much for your time tonight.
Okay, just so you know, I'm going to use your analogy with the election, if you don't mind.
Yes.
The way elections work, everything is by statute, right? To
Right.
count the votes, certify the elections, all done by statute. Town affairs are similar. And while there will be another meeting with our town planner for the residents to discuss the well operations that's been monitored for the past 12 months, it's all on the town's website. 6 months. That has nothing to do with the building, with the permit for the building to proceed. The two things are not connected, and they will not be connected. So there will be a meeting set up, but just so, I don't want to give you any, silence is like acceptance type of thing. I don't want you to have any misunderstandings. The two things are not connected. The building inspector has a statutory role. He will be fulfilling his obligations pursuant to that statutory role, and it is not connected in any way, shape, or form to your request for a meeting regarding the well monitoring, just so you know, okay? And it has nothing to do with us not being diligent. It has everything to do with us being diligent, following the statute, following the law, and doing everything the way it's supposed to be done.
So I would like to ask a question, since I've got the advantage of less time and who's familiar with this kind of stuff, as well as Nick Ward-Willis, so it's a double benefit. My understanding is the well monitoring program was put in place so that we could make sure that there would not be a negative impacts to the area residents who 100% solely rely upon well water. And that the purpose of the well monitoring program was not just an artificial exercise in measuring water in, water out, but that it was actually meant to provide a level of security to the area residents. Am I misinformed about that?
Well, I can't speak directly to that because I'm not involved with that aspect of it. Others in my firm are. But I will say there's no connection between the well monitoring and the issuance of the building permit.
But wouldn't a satisfactory hydrology report be a condition of whatever the zoning board
My understanding is
approves?
it was not. The building permit is not limited or contingent upon the well monitoring. Those are two separate things.
So if the well monitoring program indicated that there was a severe impact to area residents' wells, what happened? Does that mean the building permit would be issued?
It means the building permit would be issued. I'm not familiar with the
Then-
issues and the correlation. The well monitoring is being done to see what the impact will be when the construction is being done. When the building is constructed. The purpose of the well monitoring is to establish a baseline, which is being done now. And then when the new facility is built and in operation, it's my understanding that that's when you look to see as to the impact. And that was the approved well monitoring program by the planning board. It's not an issue before the town board. The
Well,
town
we
board
have the
has that
planning board
jurisdiction.
attorney here.
Mr. Steinman didn't represent the planning board on this issue. Ms. Gray from my office did.
Well, I find it kind of bizarre to implement something that has absolutely no ability to verify that there's no negative impact to people who rely
Well-
for drinking water, bathing water, household cleaning water, plant watering water. If you do that, though most people don't do that, whatever it may be.
Again, I don't want to misspeak, but my understanding is the whole point of the monitoring program is to evaluate those impacts.
That's what I thought it was, to evaluate the impact, so.
But it's after the construction is being
But so then,
occurred.
in theory, then it would be projectable.
Well, they found that there would not be an impact, and that's why the permits were granted. There was concerns, and
permits
that's why
are
they did the
granted?
monitoring from the planning board with the wetlands
Oh.
disturbance permits and those related permits.
Nick, this isn't even before the town
No,
board. This
well-
is the zoning board.
Correct, we just wanted
Only
to
in planning
ask,
board,
we just
correct.
wanted to go forth and
We heard
ask.
you, and
Well, they-
Yeah,
they-
we will
have a
with
meeting.
other
With respect to
areas,
the,
too.
right.
How if at all does the wellness center, which is not in our jurisdiction, ultimately impact Sunshine going forward? I mean, it's not the same, I don't understand, it's not the same aquifer, I think it's two separate aquifers, but what role or voice would we have in Cortland, because we also own some of that land, to take a position as to that development? Because it's not where they're developing today, but potentially tomorrow or whatever it may be. We have about 20 acres of adjacent land, or part of that property.
Honestly, I'm not familiar with.
I think
We
we've got
asked
7.
them to look at certain,
We
we had
absolutely
certain issues that we wanted them to look at and consider, but I don't know that we have authority to.
We're an interested
Stop
party.
it.
Do
We're
you know
just an
if
interested
I don't
party.
recall getting a response. Do you know whether we've?
I will follow up with Sabrina on Thursday to get a better understanding of exactly what's coming out of this well monitored program, because if it was kind of a paper exercise with actual benefit or sort of veracity or security to residents, then I'm afraid then.
I don't think it was a paper exercise. I think you would benefit from having a conversation with Sabrina just to clarify the scope and the purpose and the intent of it.
And to be clear, it is the intention of the town to meet with the residents to grant that request for transparency so that you have an understanding of the well monitoring program that has been established, to review the data that's available on the website today, and to help you to understand how to interpret that data going forward.
Thank you
That
very
is in
much.
the works.
Greatly appreciate it.
We're asking.
I'll be brief. Thank you very much. My name is Charlie Bennett. I am a resident on Cedar Lane as well, actually very direct neighbor to the Sunshine Home. And I will reemphasize what Laura had asked, but I won't go any further into talking about the well monitoring at this time to save time for all of us tonight. But I will say I am a parent of an 18-month-old. The closest neighbor to us has 2 little girls and has a 3rd on the way. They're right next to them is a 6-year-old boy. Down the opposite way, within a mile, we have actually a couple that just had a newborn and have a 3-year-old. I'm probably missing 5 or 6 other children that are within a mile of this facility that live and walk down Cedar Lane quite frequently. There has been very little information given out regarding the construction hours and and what that's going to look like and how that's going to impact our quality of life. I take my son out probably 3 or 4 times a week walking around Cedar Lane Park, which is directly next to Sunshine Home. There's already some Ossining construction vehicles that go in there. We have to be aware of that. If that construction activity quadruples, which I have to imagine it will when they're expanding the facility 7 times, that's going to really impact the safety for kids. I mean, some kids are now getting to the age where they're going to ride bikes and stuff around that park. That's all going to affect us. I took a picture a few weeks ago. I was taking my son around Cedar Lane Park like we do on a weekend, and a waste management vehicle literally in front of Sunshine Home had tipped into the ditch because the roads are very narrow, and if you have a driver who's not really conscious of the speed limits and things like that, went right off to the side. I mean, I can imagine what would happen if there's people walking down and there's frequent traffic on there. So to reiterate, we're asking for a public hearing before building permits are issued to discuss not only the well monitoring system, but also issues regarding safety, what construction is going to look like, how blasting is going to be regulated, and how we're going to be given information regarding that. We feel like there has been very little information regarding that given to us. Don't need to debate it or talk about it right now, but we just want to get on record that we are asking for a public hearing before building permits are issued. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Well, just a point of clarification that, again, the town board members, I think, we've advised you before, the building department is separate, and you can't prevent them from issuing the building permits, and they have that independent authority, and this board doesn't have jurisdiction over this project.
No, but we can ask them to just make sure they're looking into the construction schedule and how that's gonna
Jill and I have made
structure.
notes on that, yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, getting the information out there can be done, yes.
And having meetings with residents is something we could absolutely do too. It's just when you tie it together, it's when you create the statutory conflict.
It should happen without us asking, though. Meetings with residents, I mean, this is affecting community, and that should, we should not have to beg for meetings to occur with residents.
No, you don't have to beg, you just have to.
You have to ask.
You have to ask, and then we usually do it. It's the tying it together that's the problem, not the
Thank you
meeting.
guys for hearing us.
Thank you, take care. Okay, so I think that's it for public
That's it for
comments,
public
nobody else?
comments.
Oh, John Ehrlich, here we go.
Sorry, guys. I would have been here earlier, but we lost our power last week again. We've lost the power multiple times every month. And I just, we've begun our own power program. We're putting in a generator with the building department's permission. And we wish it wasn't necessary. It's so bad that every house on Apple Tree Close will now have a generator, or almost all of the houses, and certainly most of the houses on Roaring Brook Road. Why does every single house on Roaring Brook Road require its own generator so we have it? We switched from Verizon to supply our phone service. Why? Because we had no phone for multiple months. I mean, no phone. Enough already. If you're going to build something, keep the utilities working. Let's work with the town. Come on, what are we doing? Why do we have to incur a $15,000 per house charge to put in generators? I understand it's going to cost us more now because we've got to now wire the backyard so that it can go across. It's not right. We've got a lot of building going on across the street. I mean, I asked for, before, I asked for sewers to be placed down the center of the road, which would have been an easy upgrade, so at least we would have solved that problem. That did not happen as well. So what I'm here today to do is to talk about infrastructure on Roaring Brook Road. It is absolutely crucial. So thank you very much for your time. This is a very good board. This is also a very good planning board. But there are issues that we need to address, and this is an imperative. Thank you so much.
John, it's my understanding that the power failure that happened last week, which quite honestly, it's not clear why that means you're late today, but putting that aside. But the power failure, did you say you're late today because of the power failure last week?
No, I wasn't late today.
Oh, I thought you said you would have been here earlier, you said. I forgot what you said. You said something like that.
It doesn't, what matters is even if they had a storm-related thing, let's face it, one of the things happened because one of the transformers blew on 117, but that didn't affect us the week before when we lost our power. That didn't cause that our lights are blinking all the time. Why is that necessary?
That's a different story.
I can't replace Con Ed. We understand it's a Con Ed problem. But let's deal with it, guys, come on.
Well, John, this is the first, I knew transformer blew last week. I heard it wasn't related to construction. The very next day, they came, did some additional repairs, and everybody lost their power while they were doing those repairs. It's the first I'm hearing that your lights have been blinking. That's
Well,
something that...
the light, we've been having ongoing power issues on Roaring Brook Road, and ask the other residents. Why would every house, every single house, or just about every house, maybe there's one or two that haven't installed generators if you didn't have to?
Well, I haven't heard about these issues.
The
This is the first I'm hearing it.
transformer affected
We knew
much-
about
much
that,
more
we
than
know
your
about
street.
that. I
That's
got
right
that.
also.
It was a neighborhood issue. But the point is, the same negligence or whatever that caused them not to be able to deal with this effectively, not having redundancy on the wires and other things, this is the cause for so much. Every time we have a storm, we have a problem. So what are you gonna do? You're gonna decide, well, I guess we want to protect all the wires, so we're going to cut down all the trees. We're going to do that. This is just an issue that has to be dealt with. And we're not advocating cutting down the trees. We're not advocating cutting down the branches. But we've got to do something. So I'm asking this board now to do it, to think about it aggressively. I have other comments related to the subject that's going to be talking later, so I'll come back at that time.
I would just say that, so this board is taking positive steps in that direction to try to push Con Ed into
I
doing
understand.
more storm hardening and readiness. I sit on the executive committee for United Westchester, which is a board that was put together by Assemblyman David Buckwald and County Executive George Latimer in order to try to move these issues. We've issued a series of recommendations and been meeting with Con Ed about them since March of last year. So there are steps in this direction. They're not moving as quickly as they could be, and I hear you on these concerns. But I just want to say that we are trying.
We
to
understand, we're not challenging responsiveness of government. What we're challenging on is competence of Con Ed. What we're saying is you've got a bad company. You've got a company that's not doing its job right. Would I love to see another company in here working on this? Well, maybe there are alternative forms of power that we can have a power choice just like we have a phone choice. But right now, I don't think the infrastructure is in place to do that. I am not, please do not think by my comments that I'm in any way saying that this board is not doing everything it can and that related committees is not doing everything it can, or the
And
administrator is
I
can't do
didn't
it.
take you to be.
Or I understand that. This is a very good board, this is a very good town and a very good government. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks, John. Okay. So what do you think?
Might as well get going.
Okay.
You're supposed to go.
They have three. Yeah, they have a quorum. Okay, so we will, a motion to open, with first the town board, we'll go, a motion to,
Yeah, I move to open the joint
Reopen.
public hearing
this is a town board hearing.
for the town board regarding the request for modifications of the temporary certificate of occupancy for Chappaqua Crossing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we have, I guess, a reciprocal motion that will entertain opening or reopening or continuing the public hearing that we started last week, January 22nd. Is there such a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Okay, we got three ayes. All right.
Bob, great job.
The heavy lifting.
Should we hear from the applicant first, or our traffic consultant? What do you think?
We'll start with the applicant for the ask, and then we'll respond.
Right.
Let's
Maybe
leave
the
the ask
applicant
out.
just refresh, bring us back where we were last time, what the open questions were, and then I think Lou's going to have some information to share with us.
Sure. Good evening. Thank you for having us. For the record, my name is Janet Garris. I'm Mark Weingarten's partner. I'm here often. I don't say much, but I do write to you often under the nom de plume Mark Weingarten. So, so thank you for having us. When we left you last week, we had talked about some modifications to the proposed construction schedule, which would compact the construction into a shorter period of time by allowing the applicant to perhaps work some additional hours, both during the school holidays and then on weekends. So we worked with your consultant and our consultant, and we submitted that to you. I think that rather than continuing the discussion, you know what the ask is. Obviously, we're looking for your permission to be able to open Lifetime Fitness, Pet Value, and Fidelity Investments while we're in the process of completing the conditions of approval for the various approvals that we have. So that's why we're here. We have our entire team here to answer questions you might have, and obviously your consulting team is here as well. So rather than belabor the point, I'd like to get to it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
That's me.
It's Lou.
So we issued a review letter dated January 29th to the board, and we outlined a couple of items. So in our ongoing discussion and working cooperation with the applicant and the applicant's engineer, the latest construction plan for sequencing is made up of 4 different phases. So Phase A, B, and C, and we could take them individually. That's really in one category, and then there's a Phase B, I, which is a little bit different. So Phase A, the Phase A, as far as construction activity, would take place during the hours of 9 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. And for most of these phases, it is a 9 o'clock start in the morning. So it's after the school peak and after the highway peak, right? So it's a 9 o'clock a.m. start. This particular phase would be on the west side of 117, north and south of Roaring Brook Road. And traffic during this phase would be shifted to the northbound lane, which would be a flagger-controlled one-lane operation. So what we're talking about is similar to, I guess, maybe it was November or beginning of December, where there were multiple trucks and multiple utilities at the intersection, and there was a flagger operation, and there was only one lane available for both northbound and southbound travel lanes. And so that would happen, that would continue during the off-peak hours from, again, 9 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. And in that Phase A, in addition, the southbound right turn lane from 117 to Roaring Brook Road going in the westbound direction would also be closed. And obviously, this is construction-related activity for multiple different elements of the construction.
And what was the expected duration of Phase A?
So I don't really have that information. We could ask the applicant to come up, but I didn't break it down into the specifics on each one of these phases because there are multiple activities that happen. It might, quite frankly, and I'm not sure, maybe Mr. Walsh could speak to this, but it might not be known until construction starts exactly, what weeks are going to be assigned to each individual phase. There might be Phase A that happens for a week, and then 3 weeks later, there might be another Phase A that they may need to enact.
So I think it's less about phases. You're not going to go from Phase A to Phase B to B1.
That's correct.
More that these are different scenarios that we are going to encounter at some point in time during the MPT.
That's right.
And maybe you can explain, once you get up here, how the increasing of working time, for example, on a past normal working hours, on a weekend, how that shrinks the duration of certain projects potentially, so that we have a more concrete understanding, whether you're moving around or not, how much time we're looking at for one lane of traffic. But we'll, I guess, just address that once you're...
Will the phases overlap, or are they sequential, you'll do one at a time? How will that work?
The phases most likely won't have overlap, but again, Mr. Walsh can come up and explain that. It's in phases mainly because of the areas of construction along 117. So Phase A, again, is on the west side of Route 17. Phase B is also on the west side of Route 17, but it involves other aspects of the intersection and the roadway. So each one of these phases, and maybe it is best then to put it up on the screen so you can see a phasing diagram.
And if everything works right, it actually could not. The big F, right? May have been on the TV back off.
While you're doing that, can I ask you a quick question? The hours we discussed when there would be weekend work or during school holiday when we would allow longer work times, are you anticipating that those are falling into any of these phases?
Yes, and so there are two weeks where school is out of session, and in those 2 weeks, they anticipate having here's the phasing. In those 2 weeks, they anticipate having a 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. operation, and that 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. operation might be truncated back to 5 p.m. depending on how the police who are going to be at the intersection feel the traffic is. The overall feeling is that during those periods where school is out of session, there would be less activity, obviously, at the school, but in general, less traffic on the roadway. If that is true, then they can go until 6 p.m. If not, then they would have to stop at 5 p.m. So with that turned on, let me go back up. So this is the Phase A operation, and so you can see that for the most part, it is on the north side and south side of the intersection, but it's on the west side of 117. And so that's the reason why the southbound right turn lane would not be opened, and we're looking at the area basically on this side where the drainage infrastructure and the retaining wall would have to be erected and put in place. And so all of that is on this side, resulting in a one-lane operation for both northbound and southbound. And what that means is that there's a flagger that really controls traffic on the north end and on the south end, and also on Roaring Brook Road, so that traffic through this area is obviously very slow and controlled during the construction period. Now, obviously, anytime that you're doing construction, it takes time to set up this plan. It takes time to break it down back to the MPT plan that's out there now. And so the time that's in between is really the time you have to work. So to have the most expansive number of hours during the day obviously produces the best in terms of the amount of work that you can get done. So that is Phase A. So again, this would be mostly the drainage structures. Anything that's happening in that shaded area would be considered that Phase A activity.
So when I match this against the project plan that was submitted by the applicant, I come up with this being the scenario for most of the duration until the project completion. Is that correct?
No, so, as Lou
Go
was
ahead.
saying, I'm sorry,
Do you
Dave
want to
Walsh
grab a
from Summit
microphone,
Development.
Dave?
So Dave Walsh from Summit Development. So the way this first phase was working, we were asked last week to see if we can consolidate the majority of the drainage work within the first week where that school break was, and then kind of come back in April for that second school break to do the turning and leveling and moving into the final paving. So in order to do that, so we have large drainage structures from about here to here that go across the road, that kind of go like this, and then into this island, and then large drainage structures that have to be installed in through here along Mr. Lewis's property where the retaining wall goes. So that, by closing down and having only one lane open for both forms of traffic, which we agreed would be less traveled that week, we're able to get those structures in, along with the new pole bases for the traffic signal, and there's 3. So that excavation will take place as well. So by taking this particular phase and combining it with the other phase that we'll be doing in April, we've eliminated about 5 or 6 weeks of lane closures from the overall schedule and concentrated them within those 2 weeks. So the only other time that we would probably need to close lanes at this point is during final paving, that's, late April.
So 5 or 6 weeks out of a total of, again,
I don't recall the actual
I mean,
total.
it's, yeah, no,
But it's significant.
It's gonna be.
Basically, it was 4 months, so 5 or 6 weeks is a lot.
Yeah.
So let me just make sure I understood what you just said. When they have the school closure, you're gonna concentrate the heavy lifting on the north and southbound side of westbound side of 117. In those 2 weeks, one at the beginning of the operation, one right before paving, will be the 2 weeks that there will be lane closures by and large.
Full lane closure
closures.
where only one lane is open, both north and southbound. So we'll have the certified flaggers there, performing their duty to make sure
And
the
in-
traffic flows along.
And in the other
Sunshine.
scenarios, it would be intermittent lane closures as you
There
need to
may be
move
need
trucks?
to do intermittent to get trucks in and out
Right.
in order to load equipment, like for instance, when we're constructing the retaining wall, we may need to close a lane for 20 minutes to get a
Correct.
delivery truck in there or something like that and then reopen it.
what kind of notice is available for residents, both in our community, just anywhere, drivers, that you are going to be shutting down those lanes for a period of time? Is it something that you have advance notice?
Well, certainly we would go by the schedule that we've presented in terms of the
But if you're shutting down for 20 minutes at a time, you can see it backing and backing up, and people are gonna get stuck. You can't U it out of there.
Yeah,
Is there a
I
reason
don't know
by
if
which
there's
you
a
could do that?
mechanism in place to notify the.
Like a
I mean,
signage further down the road?
We may know a day ahead of time, and we can certainly let the town board know, and you could put it on your website, perhaps?
Well, that's gonna do nothing. I'm
We
talking about
have those
signage.
electronic
right,
signs that
as
are
far-
there.
Yeah, we do have the electronic, the VMS signs in place, maybe those, I'm not exactly sure how quickly.
The day before, we can tell them.
Expect significant delays,
Yes.
the week
Yeah,
of, blah,
those can
blah,
be
blah.
changed on probably a daily or a weekly basis.
We could also do, I know we did Nixle alerts when it was like, we knew there was heavy construction. We would
Just
say
has to be in the right
avoid
place for advance.
117, right.
Because you can't U it. Once you're there, you're gonna get stuck.
Right, no, we could definitely do Nixle alerts on those days where we know that there's going to be heavy, the police do the Nixle alerts, but I'm saying we could recommend to the police that they do a Nixle alert.
We can ask that.
We could do a code red, that's a town
With
notification.
signage, we can use electric signs.
So it's only the first bullet of 4 bullets. We took a lot of time now. Just-
So anyways, that's a lot of time you can have.
You met us?
It's a significant amount of work, and we
So
can do in a very short period of time.
Can I ask you one other question while you're sort of at it? I know everybody wants to avoid nighttime construction, but as you know, weather and other circumstances sometimes play havoc with the schedule.
So we did speak to both our contractor and our general contractor in terms of doing nighttime work. And in order to do that, so we would probably start after 6 PM, and it would probably go to 1 or 2 in the morning. We'd need about 20 of the lights that nobody seems to like out there to light it for safety and for people to be able to see it. And then in addition to that, we'd have the noise.
Well, that's this nighttime work, and then there's other types. I'm just saying, if you get backed up versus, I don't know how many extra days it would take to do something. I mean, are you gonna end up being in a situation where, they get, sort of something happens midway through the retaining wall or midway through the drainage infrastructure that could cause a,
Yeah, I suppose that if we had,
I'm talking about, like-
significant snowfall or something like that, that would delay it for a few days. I'm not sure that we would be able to mobilize that quickly to move to a nighttime operation. I just think it would extend the schedule.
I would much rather see you work on a weekend than at night.
Yeah.
Because this construction is in people's front and backyards, like in their backyards. So I would much rather see it done on a weekend when traffic is a little lighter than at night when it's really gonna be disruptive to families.
And that's the direction they took from us last week, and this schedule incorporates that.
Lou?
Bullet 2.
I have a question. When you guys are flagging at the northern entrance to Chapel Crossing, will you be directing traffic through there to get to the parkway instead of having them try to go through the intersection and turning on Roaring Brook?
No.
No.
We have been asked not to do that because the DOT would not approve that type of maneuver because it's taking people off of a public road or a state road and bringing them onto private property. Certainly, we have advocated that in terms of we'd like to do that, but we don't think that the DOT will approve that.
Lieutenant, can we do anything with signage on our own, or do we also need the DOT?
We can't.
People are gonna do it anyway.
That's not to say that people
assuming
can
they know.
do it.
And that's not to
They
say
just
the town
can't be.
supports people doing that.
They can't be directed to do that.
Can't be a formal suggestion.
No, the town cannot suggest that
So
either.
our thousands of viewers at home will not do that.
And the person in the
Not
chicken
detour.
suit who's like telling you.
Okay, thank you.
We gotta change the little man to a winking man, like that.
Don't go that way.
Lou, I have a question about the
Yes.
flaggers, because this was an issue that I thought I observed the last time we had the closures there. Will the flaggers sort of try and operate on timing schedules as if they were lights? So if you have a 1-minute flow of a light, will the flagger keep that direction open for 1 minute? Or is it just going to be a sort of piecemeal, they'll see how many cars are in one direction and try and keep that direction open longer?
Well, it is based on some type of timing pattern, yes, and they are in communication with each other. So they could see, up the road, how far the queue is, and they could try to balance what's happening on either side. But for the most part, yes, they would try to give equal amount of time, similar to what the traffic signal is doing, yes.
So is it correct to say, just to kind of summarize this, that 5 to 6 weeks, so we're looking at perhaps, 36 work days, if we're talking about six work days a week? Can't
Yeah.
talk anymore.
Did you provide us with I know you provided the consultant, but a lot of this material sort of came in today. Did you actually provide us with a revised schedule?
Yes.
We did, yes.
Okay.
It's in there.
And he provided us with reading glasses that are better than mine.
No, they did not.
So that.
No, they did
Let's
not.
look on the computer, it was very difficult.
But yes, the schedule is provided. These highlighted areas in red are the weeks where school is out of session. And so we're looking at the Saturday operation as well, the weekend operation. So for the most part, we've looked at this, and again, in consultation with the applicant, and the applicant was able to knock some time off, reduce the schedule even more, so that I think they have been accommodating as far as trying to pack in as much as they can. Also given the fact that, we're going into February and March, and so there might be some other downtime related to weather. So Phase B, what Phase B does is, it's similar to Phase A on the south side of Roaring Brook Road, but on the north side, the right turn lane would be available and open. So vehicles coming down, they would be able to have a choice. Again, the flagger would be able to direct them either in advance of the intersection here, and so people would be able to actually make that right turn and head to the west. And so that operation, again, on the south side, with the right turn lane being open. Again, the hours of operation would be 9 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. So the B1 phase, so in this case, a lot of this activity also includes the retaining wall construction, but in this phase, and again, this was something new added, the contractor was able to come up with a plan that allows for 2 travel lanes, 1 in each northbound and southbound direction. We also have the southbound right turn lane that would be open as well. And with this operation, obviously, it's not the entire duration with the flagger operation. So that's where a lot of this benefit comes from, in the sense of 1 travel lane in each direction. This is another reason why I did not really advocate having the northbound left turn lane put in, because we knew that we would have to take it out pretty soon, and so why even have it if you're not going to?
What's the maximum amount of time that left arrow can be green?
Yeah, that's the same, really the same as now as far as giving enough time to all of the approaches for it to work.
So it seems to me that B1 would not be dissimilar to what we have right now, the conditions that we have existing, except the lanes are a little bit more narrow.
Right.
But otherwise, you're going to have the traffic signal working, and we have both lanes open, but for a couple of minor interruptions where maybe a truck has to make a delivery, temporary shutdown just to do that, it should be very similar to what we have.
We're gonna have a little bit better, at least coming southbound, because you're gonna have an operating right turn lane.
Well, we have that now.
To the full length, from what it was, I'm talking
Right,
about when we had it.
you would have the queuing and it would be a little bit
So it
wider.
would actually be longer.
Yes.
So it'd be better. You're right, Jason, Jeremy, sorry.
Peace and Jeremy, tomato.
I do it all the time.
It's a J.
Fred.
Different reasons.
And the last one is C, and C actually has work on the east side of 117. So again, in this particular case, it's a one-lane flagger operation again, but the southbound right turn lane is open. This is a little bit less intrusive, I guess, to the intersection. But again, when at the bottom of our first page of our letter, we talk about this is limited to no more than 6 weeks, non-contiguous activity of having this type of flagger operation based on the revised schedule. And with that phase B1 or BI, the two travel lanes would be 10 feet for each one of those travel lanes. At the top of page 2, we also talk about, again, having the hours of operation from 9 a.m. to 2:30 p.m., except for when school is not in session from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. But we do have a caveat as far as the operation, that it is subject to modification or cancellation from either the police or from us, depending on how we see that traffic volume from that 5 p.m. to 6 p.m., how it's working. I believe that they probably can have it until 6 p.m. For those weeks where school's out of session, but I wanted to give the opportunity to the police that are going to be out there to make that call. And I think the applicant is okay with that.
What's driving the 6 o'clock stop? Is that just a working thing, or if the
Daylight
police felt
hours.
it was okay, can you go to 7?
Yeah, for the most part, it's daylight hours, and as we get closer, as we go into the year, we'll have more and more daylight hours, so they might not even, quite frankly, in the first 3 weeks or so, actually go to 6 p.m. just because of that daylight activity. So it's up until 6 p.m. They might close shop even sooner, especially in the first three weeks or so.
But Greg, you're sort of implying, well, so what happens if daylight goes to 6:30 then?
It goes to 7 early
Goes
morning.
to 7.
I'm looking.
Why can't they go to 7?
March 10th is daylight savings.
Spring ahead and we get more light,
Right,
so
right.
that's all I was wondering.
Right now, we have it until 6 p.m. I'm not sure if there's other contractual issues with having people. I think that's something after the first 3 weeks of construction can certainly be revisited during that second winter break for school, that it might go to 7. If that helps, and it might. It certainly might. We just go on and we talk about the flagger control, one-lane operation is likely to create traffic congestion and queuing, similar again to what everyone experienced in November and December when operation was there, flagger operation was there. And that is a cost of doing construction. And we also understand that there has to be construction for the construction to be completed. And so there is a balancing that has to happen here. And we believe that with the modification to the schedule and allowing for a phase that allows for 2 lanes of traffic with 10-foot lanes, it definitely achieves that.
And I think there's also qualitative differences. I mean, again, we talked about Phase B1. We might see, that might be fairly invisible in terms of difference from what we see now. So I'd like to focus on A, B, and C, just to get your thoughts in terms of what the significant traffic congestion and queuing might be. again, we all experienced this situation in November, December. I don't think your flaggers could see where the cars were, because they'd have to go around a couple of curves and go about a half mile, and through hills. So what can we expect? And that was back when we didn't have Whole Foods and the fitness open. So what is that delta? I keep asking about that delta. What does it mean? It's not to say it doesn't work, it's just what do we do here? How do we understand this? And
So
what is it?
So in reality, it's very hard to put a delta. It's hard to get a number. And that's because as construction starts, people change their habits of driving, not only time of day, but also the route that they would take to get to certain places. More people may utilize the sawmill and go in through that way while they know that this is going on, right? So the delta itself, it's definitely going to be longer because you have additional traffic associated with what you have approved to open already. What we're talking about with the Lifetime Fitness, and we have a table in here that talks about the overall number of trips associated with Lifetime Fitness, and that translates to about 60 additional PM trips during the peak hour. And that's one car every minute, right? So that in and of itself is not a significant increase in traffic. The queue obviously would be longer, but the queue might be shorter because people choose a different time or they choose a different route. So at a certain point of level service F or a certain point of queue, we really don't have any models to predict how more would be generated by this.
With those, sorry, finish.
Yep.
I apologize. Go ahead, I apologize.
So as far as what the delta is, we can quantify it in terms of the number of vehicles. We could even say that I could say that there might be additional 3 to 5 minutes of additional additional delay. There might be another 100 feet of additional queue, but that's really maybe an average or even a worst-case scenario of what you would have. There would be more.
Again, it seems to me that Phase A is really our biggest concern. Again, I don't know how long Phase A is of the 6 weeks. If that's just 10 days, or if it's 5 days, 15 days?
Phase A was basically that first recess period.
Right.
And that's why you have Phase B, then we tried to open the right turn lane on the north side.
So Phase A, we could expect would be toward
10
that
days,
beginning.
let's say 10 days, and then that's why we picked up Phase B, because that gave us the opportunity to work would have been completed up on the north of the intersection, and then we come back and put the lane back in.
That reminds me of one other quick thing. I know I observed that the initial plan went beyond the 60-day period, but that wasn't to say that it should be prohibited. I thought perhaps the town board might be, if it works for you guys, if it helps you to have a couple of days before February 15 to stage, so on February 15, when the school's out, you're not staging, but you're really getting work done, perhaps that would be helpful. And again, that's up to the town board to make that change in the previously approved TCO, if they're so inclined, if it will help you materially. If it doesn't, fine, but it wasn't meant to be punitive to make that observation, it was just that we would have to make a change.
But that's effectively why the different phases are there.
Right.
And this is very much similar, not to what happened when I had all contractors and Con Ed and Verizon and everybody else. This is very much similar to what happened when they were putting in the gas line, where basically they had the flaggers shutting down a lane on 117. And I myself, coming from an adjoining village, I have made sure that I knew there were flaggers out there during that time frame, and I avoided 117. And that just goes to what Lou said, the fact that...
What, you mean the traffic consultant avoided the traffic?
No, the traffic consultant always avoids traffic. The first thing I look at, what's the best route? Okay? I came home from Kennedy one night, and my wife said...
You got special software for us?
I never even knew about it, okay?
He's not sharing.
And I said,
Yeah,
thank
we
you
can't
very
share
much.
that software.
She says, I stopped following you after the first turn. So the answer is, the purpose here is, Phase A was that 10-day, when the school's out, starting on Saturday, and if we had the opportunity to stage some work to begin with, especially behind the barrier, that would be helpful on the north side, because it doesn't disturb anything, that barrier is still there. And then secondly, we would go into Phase B, which is the we put the right turn lane back as soon as we can. And then phase B1 is when we're effectively building the wall.
Both
We're
lanes are
able
open.
to keep effectively what's there today, the MPT. And then the last one, the phase C, is basically going to occur in the second phase, with the second school time frame. And get that, and then you got the paving back and forth, and that's you're gonna.
When I review your project plan, it looks like you're back in phase A for most of the month of April. Do these activities not require
It depends upon
north
which side of the road you're working on.
So I'm looking at your project plan right now, and it looks like you've got north side work, north of Roaringbrook Road, work happening, and I don't know what these things mean. Full depth sub-base, asphalt truing and leveling, mill and overlay, asphalt top course, striping and signage. All of that stuff is happening on the north side. Does that not require lane closures?
Well, it does require lane closure, but it depends whether you're going to be in A mode or you're going to be in C mode.
But C is what when work happens on the east side
Yeah, but
of
what happens is
117.
truing and leveling is you have a roadway bed, and you're going to be bringing it up, let's say 6 inches. You don't bring the entire road up at the same time. You can't. So you bring it up in lifts. And as you bring the lifts up, you're going to have one plan, and then the next time you may switch to the other plan. So depending upon which side you're doing the lifts on, and lift being the amount of pavement you're putting in at one time, you're not going to come in and put 6 inches of pavement in at the same time, because what happens is then you got a differential. You'll never get it back to the typical plan in that. So you go in stages. You go 3 inches, 3 inches, 3 inches, and you bring it up slowly.
So that's another reason why, you could have any one of these phases during different parts, because there are many different things that are happening. And so it's hard to give a date on each one of them. But I agree with John that this schedule and these plans really fit the best for doing all of this construction during this time period that they're allowed. And
I don't argue with that point. I think you're probably right. I think that we are required to report to the residents of this town and to give them reasonable expectations about what the level of service and the traffic that they're going to encounter at this intersection is. And so if we're going to be returning to a phase A scenario, which is the, kind of the most sort of restricted access through this intersection, we just need to be able to tell people, honestly, this is gonna be happening in February and in April, or, to be able to set those expectations about what that looks like. So that's the only reason I'm asking.
But that's
Before
the
you
reason
get
on the phases.
too far beyond the point that John was mentioning before about mobilizing before the work actually starts, in condition 9 of the town board's resolution, you provide that the applicant may perform work that does not involve road closure and all such work occurs outside of the travel lanes within that 60-day time frame. So you don't need approval for the mobilization. You can do that now.
So I just want to ask you a question. I know that you have done lots of numbers here and that you've relied on Mazur's projections.
yes,
And I'm looking specifically at Lifetime Fitness as the major traffic generator. With very low AM traffic numbers and very high afternoon and evening peak traffic numbers. And just as a proxy, again, not having road strip counts or anything like that, the club closest to me is Club Fit, which is right down off of 100 and 133. And the estimate, and I talk about morning peak, so I'm talking starting at 5:30 in the morning, going till about 8, which is really kind of the commuting population going and working out before hitting the train,
right.
taking a shower and then going down and hitting the train. If you go down and take a look at their parking lot during that time frame, 52 cars, it's probably more like 150 cars. So I know that these numbers were ones that Mesa provided. The actual light period for them, believe it or not, is kind of like around a little after lunch. But
Right.
if we're taking a look at these scenarios, would another 100 cars cause some kind of crippling damage? I mean, you know, one of the real questions that this was about is that when all of this was approved, all the road improvements were gonna be done, then retail was gonna open. So in theory, all of this had been anticipated, and so it would have been fine. Now what we're doing is we're inviting retail in at a time, in a construction zone.
Right.
Okay, so one of my questions to you is, I mean, I'm looking at the level of services that you're providing here and some of the queue lengths. I mean, 350 feet's not a quarter of a mile, but it's a long queue.
Yes.
And, you know, I guess to a certain extent, since I don't have experience with these numbers, is there like a point of critical failure? A traffic number which creates a point of critical failure, and if so, what is that number?
I would say that the number, we would probably have to have double the amount of Lifetime Fitness. It would have to be, you know, somewhere about 300 new vehicles where we would have a failure that it would not be manageable. And that's only because, as you said, there might be 100, let's say 150 vehicles from 5:30 to 8 o'clock, but that's over more than a 1 hour period.
No, I'm talking about any given moment during that time frame. So if you drive by 130, if you go down North State Road, and you just go by, just go to the bagel store, you know, go to wherever you're going, and just drive by and take a look at the actual traffic that one club generates.
But you
I'm not
can't
saying
compare
they'll
those
come
two.
another direction.
They're two completely different facilities.
No, but I guess to a certain extent. what I-
120,000 square feet.
Yeah, with
also
pools and
come
tennis
Club
courts.
fit.
No, but I guess to a certain extent, my question really is at what point is there a critical failure? And you gave me the number, it's around 300 cars, not 150. The second question I have is, let's just say it becomes a critical failure, what is the remedy?
The remedy would be to direct people from inside to not use 117. Because there are, remember, we're talking about the Delta is on 117 and
Yeah.
going through this intersection. There are other routes that people can take, and in fact,
That's a good, okay.
what'll happen is, and that doesn't exist in Club Fit.
Mhm.
What happens is that most likely the people going to the train station or going to work, and they have to be in the gym in the morning, will most likely head to the sawmill and get onto the sawmill.
The site.
They're not going to go out to 117 unless they're going up to Mount Kisco or going further south or maybe 120. But there's all other alternates. So I think that's the relief valve, if there is that kind of pressure.
So when you're telling the people inside, I think
Well,
what
you
you're
put a
saying
sign
is
and
you're
say-
talking about your construction guys, because I don't think your construction guys are part of the
No,
calculation.
what would happen is, for example, let's say, there was some kind of an accident or an incident on 117. Club Fit could post a sign coming out, accident on 117, please avoid. And guaranteed, anybody coming out of that club, seeing that sign, will go right down to the sawmill.
Okay, and then the other thing is, Lou, did you talk to the ambulance and fire about these scenarios?
No, but what?
I did not.
I did not either.
I did not, and again, I think and we'll go to Lieutenant in a second, but I think from the standpoint that if we have any one of these, right, from the flagger operation, would be able to see that an emergency vehicle is coming, or that emergency vehicle would be traveling on the other side of the roadway to the point where the flagger operation is. I don't remember any problems with a one-lane operation with emergency vehicles that had a problem getting through an area that was down to one lane
But I mean,
in
does it have a
both
level of
directions.
service of E?
But we really don't,
That's what I'm
yes,
saying.
yes.
What I'm talking about?
And usually when any construction area is down to one lane with flagger operation, it is at a bad level service because of the congestion and the amount of delay going through the intersection. Lieutenant, you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, even when it was down to one lane last time, there was times we had to get through emergency situations, and it's something we deal with, I mean, not all the time, but we're familiar with it. Getting to the flagger, there's room for the car to maneuver with us lights and signs to get over. And once the flagger sees us, I mean, they're all trained to shut down, the oncoming traffic and close it down both ways to get us through. If it was such a bad incident that I think somebody recommended, we would shut down, for example, Annandale and Whipple, and just completely shut down the intersection to allow emergency vehicles to get through. And as for the fire department and the ambulance, the coordination will be through us. You know, if it comes to us, we communicate. So we would direct them away from it if necessary, or tell them what we have done to provide a safe passage.
And that wouldn't be a problem even with a long queue. I mean, my concern is that you have this one lane open, you've got traffic oncoming in the wrong direction, and the ambulance or you guys are blocked. And again, this thing was at least a half a mile last time around. I mean, stopped, and people going the other way. I don't know what the time frame is, but, you know, as you know, better than I, you know, time is very, very critical in some of these responses. So I'm sure there's a way of doing it, and it's really your jurisdiction.
Yeah, we will get to the flag person, and then everything will change once they see us coming.
I just would feel better if I heard that you guys have meet with the applicant, make sure that there's an actual plan in place so that they understand, that these flaggers understand, so they can shut down.
I mean,
It's your business. I don't think it's
can do
ours.
that, but I mean, any flag person who sees an emergency vehicle coming
I'm
will
not
shut
worried
down
about
the
the
road.
flag person. I just would feel a lot better that, you know, the emergency services leadership were aware of what the situation was going to be with a realistic understanding of some of the congestion that could be there, so they in turn can make their own contingency plans, or if they have genuine concerns, they can express them and they can be addressed in advance. I just kind of feel like, you know, 117 is a thoroughfare to the hospital.
So one thing that we have done in the past where we
Or
had.
if you have a heart thing, you want to go down to Westchester, I guess you go down the Sawmill, but still, I mean, it's you know, Mount.
What we have done in the past in other roadways that are similar in situation is to give the emergency personnel the same radios that the flaggers have, to give them advance notice that they are coming, so that they know that they could keep the entire area clear, so that when they get to the flagger, then the entire roadway's open and they can get through.
Is that
That's
something-
something that I'm sure could happen with
Well,
the applicant.
what
And we
I
could have
would-
that meeting with the emergency.
Before we start the construction, we would meet with emergency services and make sure everything is coordinated through the lieutenant to make sure that our flaggers are prepared, and if an incident is bringing an ambulance northbound on 117, that basic lane, it's going to sacrifice southbound, but the basic lane northbound
Well,
would
I
be
think in
clear.
an emergency, I mean,
Emergency.
you've got the high school there, you've got a big shopping complex there, you've got the main route to the hospital, you've got large expensive homes,
There's a lot of
you know,
things happening there.
There's a lot of, like, if you have to assess risk, like, that's something that I would hate to have a negative impact because, you know, we couldn't anticipate it in advance of actually implementing.
The better option is, since we did go to the TCO first, is you have an option that occurs, I'll say, on weekends and on 19 hours out of the day, a better operation than you would have had if you didn't have Whole Foods.
But that's the point.
But that's, not- we're talking about the future, we're talking about the between February and the end of April.
Well,
Okay, that's all I'm
just saying-
talking
just saying
about.
this-
I'm not, I don't, you know, all the good rosy stuff, we're all like patting ourselves on our back, good job. But I'm
Well, I
saying.
think it was a mutual cooperation.
Right,
I'm not
but
patting
which is why
myself on
I'm
the
asking
back or
that it
anybody
be
else. I'm just saying,
anticipated
we worked out a
That's why I'm
plan.
asking it be anticipated in advance and be part of whatever resolution that we come up with.
So maybe a condition that no later than February 9th, the applicant will meet with emergency services to review a revised MTP plan and construction schedule.
And there has to be some, if it's not satisfactory, there has to be some,
Remedy.
right.
I agree.
I mean, unfortunately, this is gonna go on whether or not we allow this retail to open. This construction's gonna have to go on with this Phase A no matter what, which
Yes,
is
but
gonna
not-
cause
but not with the
issues.
additional-
Correct, but there are
But not-
gonna be
right.
backup issues anyway, as there were before. So I think it has to be dealt with no matter what.
And the reason we're in this rosy.
The opportunity to make it stronger.
Right,
Right,
by working, we had the opportunity to make it stronger by working together like we did when Whole Foods opened, and like we're trying to do now, because this construction is happening whether Lifetime opens or not, and Whole Foods is already open. So we might as well continue to work together so that it's consolidate the schedule, have the police on hand, coordinate the road closures, work with the emergency first responders, and work on the holidays and the school vacations. and minimize the disruption to the residents. That's the benefit of working together.
And in fact, what we'll do is we'll put on the variable message signs.
Yes.
We anticipate flaggers to be
Yeah,
on the road.
that's good.
In advance,
Thank you.
early.
Wow, this is what we've
John, he has the floor now.
I've got the con.
Raise his hand.
Managing expectations is important, and one of the things that we learned is that the numbers we had for Whole Foods initially were off because it's an exciting time, and new store opens, construction's going on, so our vehicular traffic was certainly a lot more than it was, or what we expected. We explained that that'll go down over time, right?
I'd say it doesn't.
I mean, it seems reasonable that it would. You know, people are excited and it starts up. You receive numbers from Lifetime to plug into your database.
Yes.
Do you know if those numbers are for and obviously they said it was comparable, but for an opening time similar to ours? Meaning, is this 3 months, a year in, what they're seeing now at a place that's been for a while? Because I would expect, and it may not change the ultimate analysis, but for expectation purposes, if we saw a 30% jump or a 40% jump, should we just expect that the numbers that you have here may in fact be 30% more during that initial stage, which happens to coincide also with the construction?
I'll say a couple of things. One, we did get information from Lifetime Fitness for a similar facility, but we didn't have the actual dates or the months of the count data, which is important but not important for our analysis, because in the AM, both school peak and highway peak, there were actual numbers were similar to what was projected by Mazer and what we independently came up with based on the ITE. The numbers in the afternoon were considerably lower based on the Lifetime Fitness data compared to what was in the Mazer report and what we had. The Mazer report still was the highest numbers that were forecasted, even compared to what we are forecasting, right? Because it was a different edition of the manual, and therefore some of these numbers have come down. I'll say that it depends on the land use and the type of opening. For a retail establishment like Whole Foods or even a general shopping center, there is anticipation of that, and people will go just because it's new. For a fitness club or a gym like this, it's really membership based. In the very beginning, I would imagine over the first month, there would probably be additional traffic because people are trying to look at the club. They're probably going to offer people to come in and do some kind of workout so that they can get people in the door and have them look at the place. And so I do expect a little bit higher than what we have projected, but not on the 30% range. I would say probably 10%. If it is higher, it'd probably only be by 10%.
So can I follow up on that? Sorry.
I was just gonna add to that, and keep in mind the fact that the construction work won't start until 2 weeks in. So
Yeah.
if we were to grant the TCO to allow Lifetime to open, they would be able to open, February 1st or whenever, but this project plan doesn't have construction starting until the week of February 16th, which is also the school break week. So really, we're looking for 3 weeks in past the start of Lifetime.
And again, it's based on these different land uses, there's different times of day and different duration for a person to go to each one of these and stay and then leave.
There's going to be overlap too. I mean, you're going to get a lot of people going to Lifetime that are then going to go to Whole Foods, and that's the same one trip, where before they might have just been going to Whole Foods.
So let me go back to my critical failure question that I had beforehand. And again, just go looking at Club Fit, because they have 2 parking lots. They've got the one that's in front of the building, then they've got the overflow parking lot where everybody has to walk, which is what happens first thing in the morning. Everybody has to go to the overflow parking lot. But
But the numbers are so off. I mean, how would we expect Club Fit with a much larger, much larger facilities and equate to a much smaller facility?
It's 3 times the size.
Yeah, I mean, so I think
It's
it's
3
a
times the
concern.
size, but a lot of it's like tennis, the actual gym itself and the walking track that's above, so on and so forth, is almost exactly the same size.
It's not, it's really not.
But one of the questions I have
Yeah, the
is,
tennis courts are
let's say
packed.
that everything opens, right, and we end up in this sort of critical failure. I'm not saying it's gonna happen, I'm just saying, what if? do we have remedies, like additional police or something within whatever we are doing to help remedy any critical failure?
We shut down Facebook, so they can't go.
No, I'm serious. I mean, I know they said we can tell all the employees
It's our
and all the
remedy.
construction people to come
We
in
hide in a
via
closet.
sawmill, but you can't take trucks on the sawmill.
So
I mean,
quite,
I mean, really,
quite
what is the
frankly
relief?
and
What's the
honestly,
relief
if there's a
now?
critical failure at the intersection,
There's nothing
it
to
doesn't
do.
help anyone, right? It doesn't help Whole Food, doesn't help anything in the development, and it doesn't help Newcastle. So, yes, is there a possibility that that could happen? Yes, but I wouldn't expect that to happen, consecutive days. I don't, it could happen, it might be a one-day occurrence, but just like when the new signal opened and it was operational, there were some critical failures going into the high school. And that had been worked out over a little bit period of time, and that seems to have worked itself out and working well. So I think there could be a couple of days in the 4-month period that you will have some critical failures, but for the most part, I think it would just be a construction zone, and you and everyone, all the residents, and all the people that are going to and from the crossings would have to deal with over this period of time.
In lieu of a draft resolution also provides the police department with the authority to put additional officers out there in the event they determine it's necessary.
At the expense of?
At the expense of the applicant, right, both in numbers, locations, and hours.
So it's fair to say in sum that critical failure is not a realistic, we don't know what can happen, but it's not realistic. We can see a pop potentially for a new facility opening up. The numbers we're relying on from Lifetime, in good faith relying, although we don't know if we're comparing apples to apples, meaning what the membership is there as opposed to the membership here. But a pop of some sort, whether it's 10 or 15%, I'm making that up, but some sort could be there, but nothing anywhere near what we saw before with Whole Foods for that brief period of time.
Right, I agree with that. Similar to what we said when Whole Foods opened, that we would not want a tremendous amount of traffic in a small period of time, like a promotion where, the first 100 people get something. Similarly, we would not suggest having that as an opening where
Use
a
10
certain.
pounds for free?
Yeah, you'll use 10 pounds if you just walk in the door,
I'm there.
something like that, which they have not, I have not heard that being proposed, but again, we would also argue that, and I don't think it's gonna happen, but argue
I would
not
say
to have
keep in
that.
mind that city in Minnesota had a mayor, we have a town supervisor, so there's a little bit of a difference.
There's a big difference.
If it is a critical failure and it's unsafe, we can shut it down.
You can shut it down?
Right.
And also the resolution you adopted in December had that provision regarding no promotions. That continues and remains in place. The draft resolution before you envisions that every condition that was imposed in December remains in place unless modified.
I have to imagine too, if the peak hour in the morning is from, 5:30 to 9, that's before the construction's even started. And frankly, if traffic is so bad with the school, I think people are gonna end up going the back way or just avoiding it, unfortunately, entirely until the traffic calms down.
Right.
What's the back way? I just need to know
Just
for
to
myself.
go from the sawmill,
I
up
want his
through,
software, I want this back
from the
way.
sawmill up through
go
the
left to
site,
come
back
back
that way.
Okay.
And let me just
So
add
go
too, I
around
mean,
that way, okay.
it's a month-to-month, I mean, no offense, guys, it's a month-to-month membership. I mean, if the people aren't happy, there's too much traffic, yeah, they can just stop. Then maybe they decide to start up again.
Different time to go, or they'll cancel the membership and go somewhere else.
Exactly. So they're not, nobody's committing to a year, and then they're going whether, they just stop. Say it's not worth it. I'm not going there until this thing settles down.
So again, in our letter, we have more detailed information. I really provided the boards with the summary, but the summary of the summary is that we are okay, or we agree to the opening of Lifetime Fitness, Pet Value, and Fidelity Investments. We agree that it could be permitted to open. without significant traffic impact beyond what would be there during construction regardless.
And Nick, just to confirm, all our prior provisions, like office has to stay at 50%, all of that still remains in effect?
That is correct, yes.
Yeah,
There are some that will need to be modified, like the removal of the no right turn on red signs.
Right.
But everything else remains, yes.
Okay.
And I have given the board a copy of the December 13th resolution, so we can go through that as necessary.
Well, it is a public hearing. If nobody has any more questions for the applicant or for our traffic engineer, if anybody from the public wants to comment, now would be the time to do so. Rob?
Hi, I'm Bob Lewis. I live at 2 Roaring Brook Road. This is all really good that we're talking about the traffic the way that we are. I understand that the purpose of the hearing is to decide about whether additional occupancy is going to be permitted. But, so one of the things, let me just go through some of my questions and observations. So coming down Roaring Brook Road to the T intersection, eastbound, I've seen when the flaggers were there way back recently, the traffic light was still in operation. And that was really a problem because the flagger had his hand up, you can't come. These people got to go against the light. These people got to go against the light, and the people on Roaring Brook Road are still standing there, honking their horns, getting crazy, coming up, really speedy down the street. Is there a way to allow the flaggers to control the light?
We can change it to blink.
Yeah.
They did at some point. At some point, the light was either blinking or off,
Right.
and the flaggers were in control, but it was very confusing when the light was in operation, I agree with you.
People were getting really livid.
Yeah, we can coordinate ahead of time to make sure that happens.
Great.
Plus you'll have police. Last time we didn't have police on site. This time we're going to have police on site. So if they
Oh,
forget.
well, the police were there. They were sitting in the car. They were reading a book, but.
No, not last time they were. Not with the, now when they were doing that electrical work, that was back in November. They weren't there. Now they sit in the car reading the book. I'm talking about in November.
We're studying the traffic plan.
But I agree, we do
I can
need to
sign your
make
guy's
sure,
time card.
we do need to make sure that the light is either off or blinking red in all directions.
It
and
really
let the
shouldn't be
flaggers
off,
be-
but it would be flashing. Flashing,
Yeah.
I think that can happen.
Okay.
So my second question, I keep hearing about 6 weeks and 14 weeks of construction. Most of it is 6 weeks. But are we saying that the construction will only be 6 weeks, or will it be a total, I looked at.
It's much longer in time, correct?
No, according to the most recent version of the project plan, it goes
Through
through the
April.
end of May.
So there's that segment A, phase A, might be 6 weeks. Or B1 might be 6 weeks.
Didn't you have a chart that had the
Do
time?
you have a
period?
copy of the schedule?
We had,
It was a chart, is that, do we have that in this? Yeah, we had that.
It's that one that's really small that Nick, that Lou said you need glasses.
You're talking about this one, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, the project completion date, according to the most recent project plan, is May 17th.
For example, the wall is going to take around 6 weeks to put in.
Yeah.
12 weeks. During that time, though, we will be in phase B1. With the flow.
2 lanes going each way, 10-foot
So
lanes.
that's the primary activity that's occurring during that 6-week period, is the installation of the wall. And we have the 2 lanes, a 2-lane movement along 117. The period before is drainage work that has to be done before the wall starts. When the wall starts, then we're into the incidental items. For example, during the first week, we're talking about pouring foundations for the future signal poles. Well, it's going to be a cure time, but the concrete is curing whether the road's closed or not, so that's an incidental time frame. That takes usually 28 days to cure. Then you can put the poles in, et cetera. So what'll happen is it's going to be basically from February to May. That's the construction phase, and then there are periods in there where you have either Phase A, which is going to be very limited, then Phase B1, or Phase B, which is opening of the right turn lane during, even with the flaggers, and then Phase B1, when construction of the wall, and then Phase C is when you're starting to work on the east side, then you're going to have to flip back to the west side. That's the one that's going, so we gave different combinations, so it's going to be basically between C and B. That's what you're going to flop back to. You're never going to go back to, rarely will you go back to A, because you've almost completed all the work up there.
So if I read this correctly, the construction will be moving from here to there, and it will be more or less continuous over the course of the
That's correct.
construction. Okay, that helps. So there was all this talk about coordinating with the emergency services. I'm wondering whether there is some way to publicize this for drivers, people who would normally use 117.
Sure.
And I don't know what that means. Maybe it's a PR campaign going to newspapers.
I think maybe even send something to Caremount and Mount Kisco so they know, because they're obviously going to be coming southbound to get onto the sawmill going southbound.
You know, there was a tree down about a year ago, right opposite, right across the road, where the right turn lane goes into that right there. And it took several hours for the tree to be removed. The police came, they mostly just made sure that people realized that they couldn't drive over the tree, and but that there was an emergency vehicle that had to come by.
You gotta give him more credit.
You just got to. There's also wires. Wires, you know.
Otherwise, it would have just gone over it.
Yeah, but it took several hours, and there is no other way. You cannot drive through Lawrence Farms. So if you're approaching from the south, you pass Whippoorwill, and there's no other way to go. You have to go through that intersection if you're headed to the hospital, if you are an emergency, a fire vehicle. By the way, most of the, I would say 60% of the ambulances that negotiate that intersection are coming from the west. They're coming on Roaring Brook Road. They're not coming on 117 headed to the hospital, although there are some.
But in fairness, so if you take a look at the map of the town of Newcastle, and Jill would be happy to show it to you, Roaring Brook Road is a big cut-through road rather than driving all the way through Chappaqua. So if somebody was needed to basically get from, and, you know, that's the west, from Millwood or over by that side of town, they all cut through Roaring Brook because it's the quickest road to get to the hospital.
Or someone coming from the Parkway.
We don't have that many east-west
I got
connections.
you.
It's an east-west connection.
So it's,
Yeah, you know, realistically, if a tree falls across the road, whether Lifetime opens, whether there's construction, it's not gonna make a difference. You're gonna have an issue anyway.
But I think Sam just needs to factor that in.
Lou.
I mean,
so
Lou, sorry.
the question of redundancy
Three-letter.
is still there. How do we tell people that they might choose another way to get where they're going from?
We can certainly contact, you know, I receive alerts from Mount Kisco, so I like Nick Zoller Code Red alerts from them, so I'm sure we can do the same thing.
And it might be also working with
Also.
Mount Kisco and with Pleasantville, because that corridor is a heavy commuting corridor. There's-
You could also put it on the VA.
On the VMS boards, yeah.
Yeah.
We could start doing that, you know, soon.
Anytime.
You
Probably
know,
wanna move that.
starting this date, there's going to be, you know, heavy-duty construction going on, so.
Construction and lane closures starting February 16th to May 31st. Seek alternative routes, expect delays.
Great.
Do we ever reach out to private entities, again, like Caremount and the hospital? to
I
give
would
them-
absolutely reach out to
Give
them.
them advance
Sure.
notice so they
The
can tell their
hospital,
staff.
the medical group, sure.
Is there a trucking organization that, you know, we have all?
Well, they've been driving on RBR, so probably not.
The trouble is, I don't know how many routes, alternative routes to get between, but, yeah, I mean, it's the main truck route.
Well, I'm sure that we get 684 trucks coming down 117. And,
Absolutely.
The
and,
only way to get from point A to
do.
point B.
right? I mean, that's the only other north-south.
That's the only,
So maybe there's a way to alert some organization. You know, they have a newsletter, monthly newsletter, whatever.
I think there is I want to get it all wrong, but we got the traffic consultants here. There's a commercial driver's license organization. So for example, when we had that recent snowstorm last Saturday, they basically put out, code, whatever, so that truckers could not be on the road, because when they're fully loaded, the amount of time it takes for them to stop on icy conditions is such that it created hazards, so they basically banned them from the road. So that was done through that commercial license drivers organization. So maybe these guys know of one that we can,
Well, they use, like Greg mentioned, I don't know if he meant it to be public, but people use Waze also, and Waze, if there's delays, Waze is gonna tell you.
Also tells you construction.
and Waze also sends you down Alapartis Road in the middle of an ice storm. I mean,
Yes, it does.
It's a brilliant move.
But that's what we're talking about, diverting, if it's an emergency and you're trying to avoid
And creating
traffic.
a new one.
But they're not gonna send you down Albertus Road trying to get to Northern Westchester Hospital.
John, when you were talking earlier about the lifts and the various, the milling and the layers of pavement, you got me a little bit worried, because the last few years, when Roaring Brook Road has been repaved, each time it gets a little bit higher. And the water doesn't go out my driveway anymore, because, so we ended up putting in a trench drain and all that. But during the EIS hearings, I expressed concern about this, and I was told that Roaring Brook Road would be no higher than it is today.
It's not Roaring Brook Road, it's the 117. 117 is behind, because what happens is to get the drains in that you need to drain the water, then we had to lift the road to get the pitch.
I see.
But it's in 117 now. What'll happen is the hill going down 117 will be slightly elevated, but it will be at the 117 level, not where your driveway is.
So my driveway,
Your driveway is still gonna be higher than 117.
well, it isn't now. Oh, you're saying high? No, 117 is
Here.
It's definitely lower.
lower today.
Yeah, lower time, and it will still be lower in the future.
I'm just concerned that the water is, that the plows, when they
So
come
am I.
down
I don't wanna
Roaring
hear,
Brook
I don't
Road,
wanna hear anything, I want all the water just to keep on flowing.
you're the man. Okay. And then there was one other question that I had. I heard, Lou, I heard you say that the high school entrance is working well, and I'm not sure that that's, I mean, I'd like to maybe have some cool heads look at that again. It's not as awful as it used to be sometimes, but there's still quite a backup. And I wonder if that's something that we may be able to look at again.
Bob, let me just for timeframes, they adjusted the light like 2 weeks ago, right, the left turn?
It was a week ago Friday.
It was a week ago Friday, so unless you're talking, within the past week, it's still off. I'm not sure about your time frame because it was adjusted
Well,
recently.
This morning before.
Well, okay, if you're talking about that time frame, that's fine. I just wanted to point out that it was adjusted.
It's better, it's a little better, but I think unless we get everybody to take the buses, it's not gonna,
No, it's
it's
never
not gonna be great.
Yeah.
That's not as a result of this
It's
development.
not like a total transformation. It's a little better.
Right.
But better. But better.
Thank you.
Take it
Thank you,
where
Bob.
can get it.
Any other public comments? Okay. So, Nick, unless you guys want to tell us.
First step would be to entertain a motion to close the public hearing. Right.
So moved?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I did a double aye for you. I apologize, Bob.
No, we have to, we're trailing.
Yeah, so excited, exactly.
Okay,
Tell him Tom Curlish.
move on to the resolution?
Well, first, a negative declaration would be the
Okay.
next step for the town board.
Well, that's included within the
Oh,
resolution,
okay.
so we've got
But
a.
they still should, discuss them.
Are we going to
Does the
amend
planning board have to vote first, or do we?
No, we have to
The
vote.
town board has to vote first.
Why don't you read the resolution? And
Well-
before we do that, does anybody have any other concerns on your end? Planning board?
So as part of the application materials, the town board received an environmental assessment form from the applicant because this is still an action subject to the State Environmental Quality Review Act secret. So you need to make a determination of significance. And what the town planner has prepared for is a two-page document, which is part 2 and part 3 of the environmental assessment form. Part 2, she's filled out indicating that this project will not have any impact, so it's no or small impact may occur. And then on part 3, the flip side, is the determination of significance. And as a lead agency, this town board has to make that determination. The town planner has advised you in this paragraph that is being provided with you, and that hopefully you've had a chance to read, that based upon speaking with the traffic consultants, that there is no significant adverse environmental impact. And that would be your determination of significance, issuing a negative declaration and making that findings. And then that then allows you then to proceed to the step of action, then amending your finding statement and modifying your December 13th resolution. So is there any questions with respect to the part 2 of the environmental impact, the short assessment form, or the part 3, which is your determination of significance? Okay. So the resolution before the town board, I'm not going to read it page for page unless anybody wants me to, but I will stop on the main points. I'm going to summarize it. So the first whereas clauses talk about describing the action or request that is being made is to authorize the issuance. Back in December, you authorized the issuance of a TCO, temporary certificate of occupancy, 43,000 square feet of limited retail occupancy for Whole Foods and Chase Bank. And then a new application came before you for an additional 48,500 for a total of 91,550 square feet. That is the correct amount. There's a typo in 2 places that board members brought to my attention to be corrected. Whereas then talks about the application materials, references that you had a joint meetings and public hearings with the planning board, and sets forth again on pages 2 and 3 all the materials that you've received and reviewed, and carrying through onto page 4 to reference the staff memorandums from Lou's office and the lieutenant's weekly reports. And then again on page 5, we're detailing additional information that is being provided after the initial submission.
And if I might,
Yeah.
the planning board members should pay close attention because the resolution that you have before you mirrors, in most cases, what Nick is reviewing now with the town board.
And so what is set forth here, and appreciation to Janice for taking the laboring oar and setting forth all of this, is a recitation of all the documents and materials that were submitted and which you relied upon. And then on page 6, we're going through that you're familiar with the property, that you've considered the record, that you've reviewed all the information, you've reviewed the weekly reports, the lieutenant has provided that he's appeared. Also key on page 6 is that whereas the town board has received confirmation that condition 11 of its December 13, 2018 resolution has been satisfied, as a single utility pole at the northern intersection of Route 117 and Roaringbrook Road has been removed. You want to recall that was a key condition, that you wouldn't be considering this resolution if that pole remained, and it was confirmed it was removed. You now, therefore, in the resolve clause, resolved that the town board hereby reaffirms its continuing role as lead agency pursuant to SECRA. And then be it resolved that based upon the review of the environmental assessment form and for reasons set forth in the attached negative declaration, the town board hereby determines that granting the town board application, amending condition 84 of the Fifth Amendment to the 2013 SECRA finding statement dated November 9, 2016, so as to allow up to 91,500 square feet to permit the issuance of a TCO for limited retail occupancy prior to the completion of the improved T intersections would not have a significant adverse environmental impact. So when you vote on this, that's the first stage that you satisfied SECRA. The next step is then actually modifying condition 84 of your prior finding statement. The prior finding statement, you will recall, said No certificate of occupancy can be issued until the off-site improvements are completed. In December, you modified it to allow up to 43,000 square feet. In this resolution, you're further modifying and making just the one change to modify it from 43,000 square feet to reflect a total of 91,550 square feet of limited retail space. So that's your second resolve paragraph. Now, your top of page 8, be it further resolved that the town board application, which is SG's latest request, as further restricted solely to additional limited retail occupancy, the additional square footage we discussed, is hereby conditionally approved, subject to the following conditions which must be satisfied prior to the issuance of the TCO. 1, implementation of the revised interim MPT plan, which we've discussed tonight, and satisfaction or compliance with the conditions and notes set forth therein. 2, applicant has proposed construction to occur on Saturday between the hours of 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. As Town Code Section 90-6 only allows construction activity to occur on Saturdays between 10 a.m. and 5 p.m., the applicant shall seek an exception from the noise ordinance pursuant to Town Code Section 90-8, and its construction schedule shall comply with Section 90-6 or with any exception granted by the town board. So just let me pause there. The town board did receive a request to modify the hours of construction to allow it to exceed what's permitted in the town code on Saturdays by an hour on either end. Under the town code, you would need to give notice to the applicant has to give notice to the adjoining property owners. You would then hold a public hearing and then consider it. You have time sufficient to schedule that hearing for February 12th, which would be in advance of the proposed construction during the week the school is out on the 16th.
Isn't it 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. according to your project plan?
On a,
Or is
they're
it an
proposing
extra hour for setup, or what's the?
Right, but it's 10 to 5.
10 to 5 on Saturdays is what the town code says.
It's currently what the town code says, but we
Yes.
don't need 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., do we? We only need 9 to 6?
It's correct, 9 to 6. I'll correct that, thank you. So in paragraph 2, it's 9 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Well, the only thing is that if it was raised earlier that if it gets light after 7 o'clock that they'd be allowed to work, do we want to make it a little bit later and allow them?
I think so.
Okay, and we can consider that and make that when the hearing is held on the waiver request. So then I've added a new paragraph 3, based upon tonight's discussion, or 2 actually. No later than February 9th, the applicant will meet with the emergency services to review the revised MPT plan and construction schedule and make reasonable revisions as requested by the police department. The additional paragraph I've added is, as deemed applicable by the police department, the traffic light at Route 117 and Roaringbrook Road shall be flashing when flaggers are controlling traffic, to address the concern raised by Mr. Lewis.
I would actually like to say that, could you let us know what the conditions are that, like, for example, if it's sharing radios or doing something like that? I just think, reasonable whatever is kind of so, ugh.
And the police
It has no
department.
teeth.
But
There's no-
that's the opposite. I think it actually, the more broad it is, the more discretion.
No, I understand, but I think
Police
that,
would have.
I think if,
And the police department shall provide a report to the town and planning board after such meeting.
It's fine.
like, I want to know the meeting happens, and I want to know what was sort of discussed, and I want to know what, like, for example, Sam had a good idea, I think it should be included, so.
I'm going to change my name to Sam.
Exactly.
Moving to the boss, it's like
I'm gonna do it.
Mark.
Right. His company is Sam
Is that
Schwartz,
Mark?
but he's Lou.
And then we have
Lou, Sam, 3 letters, it's.
Same thing.
paragraph 3, the town board's December 13th, 28 resolution is modified as follows. So you have in front of you the 2013, the December resolution. On page 6 of that resolution is when you set forth all of your conditions. So at the staff level, we've gone through all those conditions and we looked at to see which ones should be modified. So the first one reads that condition 1A is deleted and replaced with the words intentionally omitted. 1A read construction of Route 117 southbound right turn lane with 2 no right turn on red signs, one of which should be oversized as detailed on the MPT plan. So there's no longer a need for the no right turn on red signs. B, condition 1N is deleted and replaced with the words intentionally omitted. N says installation of 2 no turn on red signs is indicated on plans, as mentioned, not needed. Condition 1P is modified to reflect that the temporary lighting shall be shut off at 7:30 p.m. or as may otherwise be modified by the police department because the condition you approved back in December of 18 said it would remain on until 1/2 hour after store closing. And that was, of course, modified already in the field. In paragraph D, I'm removing condition 5. Condition 5 was the requirements to have the police at all 3 entrances. It dealt with just that period after Whole Foods opened up. So now it reads that condition 5 is deleted in its entirety and replaced with the following. At the applicant's expense, a town police officer shall be stationed at the intersection of Route 117 and Roaring Brook Road or at other Chappaqua Crossing entrance drives as directed by the police department. For the first day, Lifetime Fitness is scheduled to open and continuing for the following 6 days. And this was after consultation with Lieutenant Carroll that he wanted to have a police officer there for the first week. And then we anticipated, well, what happens after that first week? So we know what we're definitely doing. So we added the language, during such time and thereafter, including during construction, adjustments of the number of officers, times, and stationing of officers will be determined at the sole discretion of the Newcastle Police Department and traffic engineer based upon conditions observed in the field and at the applicant's expense and upon notice to the applicant of such modifications. And I believe you've had a cooperative relationship with SG and sort of communicating and coordinating with the police officers, so that's going to continue. So those,
You can also remove 1I, which deals with the sand barrels or utilities.
thank you. Yep. And so it will also reference that 1I is also deleted and replaced with intentionally omitted because the sand barrels are no longer needed because the pole's been removed.
Well, except the barriers are still there,
Mhm.
and I think those sand things actually stop people from hitting the front of it.
So gentlemen across from me, any observations, thoughts, comments, concerns on that issue?
Sand barrels were in front of the Jersey barrier, right? Barrier?
The Jersey barrier's still there.
Makes it, with those being there, makes it a little bit more difficult to make that right turn, but it's entirely up to you guys.
Can we pull them back at all, make more of a curve out of them?
We'll pull them back a bit.
Yeah, instead of like going to like almost the 90, pull them back and do like a curve.
So 1I will remain.
We'll still have the barrel. We'll still have the barrel, but they'll be pulled back.
Yeah, that's fine. I just want to make sure people see it, because the Jersey barriers are still there.
I like them there, just to change the configuration.
Yeah,
Also
I
gonna
like them
kick the
too.
barrier a bit to make the turn easier.
Yep.
So the next resolved paragraph that says, except as otherwise expressly amended herein, all other terms, provisions, and conditions of the town board dated December 3rd, town board resolution dated December 13th, 2018, incorporated herein by reference, shall remain in full force and effect to be applicable to the implementation and operation of the interim MPT plans referenced herein. So rather than restating what you approved previously, it all remains in effect unless otherwise modified, which we just discussed. Be it further resolved that if the conditions are not fully complied with, the resolution becomes null and void. Be it further resolved that all review fees incurred in connection with the applicant's request addressed in the board's December 13th and 14th resolutions and this resolution, along with all reimbursable costs charged by the police, shall be paid within the early of 60 days of adoption of this resolution or prior to the issuance of the final certificate of
Are
occupancy.
you trying to incorporate both the planning board and town board here? Because otherwise, the town board's only the 13th. And we could have a similar provision for the planning board if you want.
Okay, so we'll modify it to reflect both in that paragraph, okay. Third, resolve certified copies of resolution be provided that the town staff should take all the steps necessary to implement the resolution. And then my favorite one, be it further resolved, the town council is hereby authorized to make any editorial or typographical revisions to this resolution and part 3 to the neg deck, because that's necessary. I'm only perfect at home.
We're not even going.
So that's the summary of the resolution. Any questions or comments on what I've read? If not, then it's.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second. No, is that, can you really just so move it?
Yeah.
We did
Yeah.
it? And Jeremy seconded?
What he said, that's what.
That's right.
That's fine. And Jeremy seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Sort of like the Gettysburg Address, ours will be much shorter than that long oration.
A lot of it's in there, so I don't.
As wonderful as it was.
Unless you want to, I won't repeat it all.
It's in there.
So first, again, we should start with the environmental compliance with seeker. You have an EAF from the applicant and a Part 2 and Part 3 that was circulated earlier. Also in the memo that I circulated with the planning board's resolution, I kind of set the setting for the planning board's role in this matter, and I think I'll go over that if you'd like. As confirmed by the draft negative declaration that was previously circulated to today, and the draft resolution, both of which cite the town board's prior determination to remove the subject of off-site improvements from the planning board's decision-making purview. The planning board will be bound by the town board's environmental determination as to whether allowing additional limited retail occupancy, which in this case is Lifetime Fitness, Pet Value, and Fidelity Investments, prior to the completion of those off-site improvements will or will not have a significant adverse environmental impact on traffic and public safety. They've now made that determination that it will not. Accordingly, in the event that the town board determines that a negative declaration is appropriate, which it has done, the planning board is left to determine two things. One, whether allowing the additional limited retail occupancy prior to the satisfaction of certain generally administrative conditions in its prior resolutions does or does not have a significant environmental impact, and two, determine whether to authorize the issuance of a temporary certificate of occupancy for such additional limited retail occupancy prior to the satisfaction of those generally administrative conditions. So if we turn to the negative declaration, that's the first step. With that premise, the board, if it's so inclined, can obtain a motion to adopt that negative
Right,
declaration.
is there a motion to adopt the negative declaration?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that then takes you to the resolution, which I circulated. Work was being done on and after the circulation, so there are a couple of things that have to be added. The resolution traces the planning board's history of review on this application, goes back to the December 14th, 2018 resolution, where you permitted limited additional retail occupancy for Whole Foods and Chase Bank. And now it recites the fact the applicant has sought the additional limited retail occupancy for a Lifetime Fitness, Pet Value, and Fidelity. And again, documents, as the planning board resolution, the town board resolution does, all the documentation that was submitted by the applicant, submitted by town staff, submitted by town consultants. It recites the fact that the planning board, together with the town board, has held several meetings and joint public hearings on this matter, that tonight you have closed the public hearing as the town board. It also recites what the town board has just done, adopted a resolution amending its prior finding statement to authorize this additional limited retail occupancy. And it recites the fact, as I've kind of alluded to before, that the history of the town board reserving to itself determinations of impacts of off-site improvements back in 2015, and by doing so, basically taking the planning board's jurisdiction over that away from them. And we have the fact that tonight the board has determined that planning board application was unlisted action under seeker and adopted the negative declaration, which you just did. Some additional documentation that was submitted in connection with the planning board's review, that the board carefully reviewed everything that had been submitted to it, was familiar with the property, and also received the weekly reports from Lieutenant Carroll regarding the operation of the interim NPT plan. Also received confirmation that condition 11 of its prior resolution had been satisfied with regard to the removal of the utility pole. And then it would proceed to the resolve clauses. And the resolve clauses are going to be identical to what Nick just reviewed on the town board level. They're not all in here because many of them were written after this was circulated, but the two resolutions, as the two did back in December, will conform to each other and be consistent with each other. And all the other caveats that went through about, except as otherwise specifically amended, all the prior provisions of the board's prior December 14th resolution will remain in full force and effect, and also the same provisions about modifications to correct typographical and editorial matters reserved to special counsel. And that's a quick overview. Yes?
You have different square footages than Nick has.
Well, the square footage has got to be the same. So I think 91.5.
91,550.
The other
So
93.
it
We had
appears
93.
we have
Yeah.
91.55 and also
spots.
93.
Yeah,
Go
it's
back to the last was all
91.550, yeah. There were some also late changes in the applicant in terms of how much square footage Fidelity was requiring, and that kind of got our mathematics into trouble right away. So-
Well, on that point, I wouldn't mind seeing in this resolution a list of what all the uses and their square footages, as opposed to just a lump sum 91,000 square feet.
It's
It's
in
in
the
there.
page 1, fourth whereas paragraph.
That's the new, that's the additional, I think, what's being requested. But, and then, I would personally like to see it
From the prior
outlined.
TCO?
From the prior TCO, and
You
we're
see the Whole
building up,
Foods
so you
listed?
see the list of all of them on page 2 or on page 4, where you have the aggregate total of square footage. I would like to see it itemized by use and by square footage for each use.
Yeah, we could do that in the second whereas clause.
Yep.
Yep,
Yeah, right next to Chase and
Yeah.
Foods.
yep.
Yep.
So you would just want the specific square feet.
Yes,
Thank you, Sharon.
and then we'll know exactly how large Fidelity is.
So Fidelity's in here, this 5250 is in there for Fidelity, yeah. It's specified, 40 for
Oh, yeah,
lifetime,
right.
3,300 for pet value, and
We should have a public hearing as to this issue.
So we'll add that,
Okay,
that
and
square footage.
there are a couple of people listed as present who aren't present.
Yes. We will take care of that.
Work on three folks.
Three people, right.
Yeah.
And there's a typo on page 5, line 12.
I'm still working on the people who are not present. Okay, and Sabrina, okay, I'm sorry, what page?
Page 5, line 12, in the date.
912.
Oh.
Got some extra punctuation.
Yep.
Yep, okay. Got it.
Here, the planning board resolution also allows attorneys to make typographical changes. I
Yes,
think.
it does. It does.
Okay, as
That's going to be
amended,
provision of the year at the Attorneys Bar Association meeting.
as amended, is there a motion to adopt the resolution?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Oh, God, no.
Oh, no.
You should leave.
Just leave. Go eat. Shut the mic off, shut the mic off.
Your own sin.
Nick, Jill, Les, Lieutenant Carroll, very expensive but very good. And Sabrina, who's not here, and Bob. We dropped a lot of work on you guys in a very short period of time. I just want to let you know I'm grateful. Obviously, to all of you who volunteered, I'm particularly grateful that you continue to work with us. And with that in mind, something will go wrong. We'll show up and we'll fix it. I hope I'm not back here before you until we have the CO, because this is a lot of work and it's very stressful. It's hard on the tenants, it's hard on everyone else, but I'm very grateful for all your cooperation. And I'm sure Lifetime would like to stand up and say thank you at this point, because they've been flying back and forth from Minnesota for the last.
Any excuse to avoid 25 below temperature?
We're doing him a favor.
Yeah. I've been here for the last 3 weeks. I've been able to watch the whole journey here, and I missed the first 9.5 years, so I apologize.
It's more than that.
But 3 hearings is enough for me, and I really do.
Pretty much the same.
Really do appreciate it. Thank you for all that you do, and we look forward to opening to the members of the town of Newcastle and Chappaqua. So really appreciate it.
Welcome to the community, and good luck.
Thank you. Thank you.
The town of Newcastle appreciates the discount. Construction.
So on behalf of the applicant, thank you for that. Just one last order of business, and that is in order for us to be able to implement the schedule that we've presented to you, we do need to request the waiver of the construction, hours of construction, which we sent in a letter a little bit earlier today. In order for you to be able to grant that waiver, you do have to hold a public hearing. So we're respectfully requesting that if it's at all possible for you to schedule that so that we
Yep,
can.
so when we get to the resolutions, it's number 9 in our
Got
packet.
it. Okay, sorry for that, but.
No, it's good to
Thank
make
you.
sure it's done.
Thank you.
The planning board can entertain a motion to adjourn if it wishes.
Or stick around.
Or you can stick around with us.
Bob, you can entertain a motion to adjourn.
Oh, God, yes.
Motion.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Greg, abstain. Don't do it, abstain.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Can we take a brief break?
I'm gonna see you tomorrow, but we'll.
Okay.
Take a quick break?
Okay, we're taking a
Then a motion for the, then a motion for the town board to spread out.
Second,
Okay, so welcome back, everybody. We are resuming our town board meeting of Tuesday, January 29, 2019. The next thing on our agenda is a discussion of the Hamlet Improvement Project. We have Lou from Sam Schwartz Engineering to provide some studying recommendations. We asked him to study some of the turning radii, maybe, plural? Radii.
Plural.
Yep, okay. At some of the intersections, and also we asked him to just make some preliminary findings regarding making Lower King a two-way street. I know we have some merchants here with opinions about that. Nothing is being decided tonight on that front. Lou is presenting his initial report, and then we would be talking about next steps as far as making Lower King two-way, but nothing is being decided tonight. But, so we'll start with a presentation from Lou.
Zoom that just a little bit.
Yes, I will. You want to say anything, or you want me to go? Okay. We can zoom in, for sure. What I just wanted to say is that the blue was the actual proposed striping and the improvement plan. The red is what we came up with. And so, as we zoom in, we could start here. Let's actually, you know what, let's start back here at the intersection. And so, this blue line that you see here, let me zoom in one more, I guess. I didn't want that, okay.
That's Center Street on the
Yes,
left?
this
Okay.
is Center Street here,
On the left.
and on the left, and so, okay, let me zoom back out then, just in case. This is King, Allen is this way, which is one way, right, up on the screen. And as we come back out, there's a dashed blue line here, which is the revised curb line that's out there. And the red, again, is the new curb line and the new striping. So what we put in here are 4 parking spaces. We also had another option where we had more striping and we had only 3. So there's a range of 3 to 4. I think obviously 4 is better, is more than 3. And we added some dimensions just to give you an idea of, it's about 15.5 feet from the curb to the building face that's here. And at the widest, it's approximately 40 feet from the building out to the curb that's over here as well. Just to give you an idea of what that looks like. So the purpose of this plan is really to accommodate parking on both sides, but also to accommodate a 15-foot travel lane in each direction. And I would like to say that we would normally be okay with a 10 or 12-foot lane, but not around a curve, and certainly with heavy trucks that come up and down, we feel more comfortable also with a 15-foot, with the 8-foot on either side for parking.
And Lou, for perspective, Mount Kisco Main Street is 12 lanes each way?
12
12 feet, I apologize, 12 feet.
Technically, he's
12 feet, yes.
with 8-foot parking lanes.
Yep. And so, again, just when you're coming up King Street here, the actual curb line is back there. This is just striping, and the striping is really to align visually drivers as they're coming up. The 15 feet continues, and then it tapers down to a 12-foot lane, and then it continues up. From an ADA standpoint, there's ADA ramps, there's crosswalks. We also looked at this the curbing that returns back onto Center Street here. We looked at that as well. Coming down to the intersection.
Can I just ask you,
Yep.
before you go away from that, at the intersection with Center Street, can you explain to me, did the previous drawings didn't include a crosswalk there? You're including a crosswalk that didn't exist in the final designs?
I believe there was a crosswalk
Oh, there
there,
was
Bob.
one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I thought everything in red was your.
You know what? It might be right on top of the other
Oh,
crosswalk.
Okay, all right, yeah, that's, because I was
It's
just trying to
possible.
tell what that was. And then what are those rectangles on either side of the crosswalk? The sort of, yep. right
So,
where you're-
so these are basically areas of concrete that have slope on them, so that as a ADA, a wheelchair accessible
Oh, I see.
ramp.
Okay.
So that ramp, these sections ramp up in 3 different directions, and then that little area is kind of a landing area.
Got it.
So you have a ramp on this side, a ramp up here, and a ramp on that side. So that's a typical ADA ramp, and that's typical one. So if we continue then down to the intersection, again, we are still providing 14 feet that's here, but that's to the stripe. The actual curb line is the blue line, which is not going to change, so it's actually a little bit wider in this area. And then as we turn the corner in this direction, we're looking at a number of parking spaces that are on this side. I think basically we're striping out this area again from a striping standpoint, so that there is some defined end to this parking space, and also to alert people that it's not a parking space. And we really didn't change anything, but although we did look at how the right turn works from a truck turning standpoint, and also the shared through it and left turn lane. The radius curve we looked at also, and that didn't change, which was good. And, we met out in the field, we went out in the field another time after that, and I guess the sense of urgency also with this was a lot of the drainage structures were either in place or going to be in place, so, timing was important here as well.
I thought that right slip lane is coming out.
It is.
Yes, this is not there, so if it's gray shaded, that means it's
not there
existing and it won't be there in the future, that's right. So the crosswalks will basically be on the north and south part of the, actually, all 4 corners of the intersection, but this is gone.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's what I thought.
And so we also looked at having Lower King into Allen as a 2-way roadway. And so let me zoom out for a second and get to that. That's the one with the 3 spaces, so I don't need to go through that. So if we started to look at what the intersection would be, the intersection is obviously on the other sheet, but then when we start to zoom in on how Lower King would operate, we are looking at replacing the angled parking with parallel parking. And the main reason is to actually gain enough width so that you could have 2 travel lanes. So we're looking at 2 travel lanes of 12 feet each. I think we ended up with 8.5-foot parking lane on this side. Obviously, not in conflict with any of the driveways that are here. And we continue that around to Allen. And so as you know, this is one way right now as far as, I guess, a counterclockwise movement. And the angled parking is because it's one way. So normally from a traffic flow, if it's a one-way traffic flow, we'd like to have angled parking so that when you back out, you're pointed in the right direction. On the flip side, if it's a 2-way, then we would rather have 90-degree parking so that you could back out and you can go in either direction, right? When we actually put this together, I think we gain 5 parking spaces overall in this area from going from an angled to a perpendicular parking arrangement. There's still enough travel width.
I thought you said 10 in your.
Sorry,
yeah.
it's 10. It's
Right.
2 times 5. That's what I meant to say. We still end up with, I think, a 23, roughly 23, 22 to 23 parking aisle, which typically you could have anywhere from 20 to 10-foot lanes up to 24 feet to 12-foot lanes. So anything in between would be satisfactory. And again, we're close to having 2 12-foot travel lanes as we get into this area coming in this direction.
And Lou, the net gain, or my recollection, or after speaking with Bob, if you can clarify, just so, again, our viewers at home, there's a net gain of spaces overall?
God, Mom, you're
I think it's equal.
Well, basically, when we did a quick calculation, just going along Center and coming down Upper King and going along Lower King and Ellen, there was a net gain between 4 and 6, based on our calculations.
Well, that's because we're gonna be striping, we already striped King Street, and so now we have a set number of spots, and we're gonna be striping North Greeley and South Greeley.
And the biggest gain came from going from Angled along Allen to 90. That's where the biggest gain came
So
from.
then there
So
isn't,
on Lower King, we're losing 10 spots with your proposal, but then we're gaining it right behind.
On Allen.
Yes.
On Allen.
Yes.
Correct.
And we're gaining spaces in other areas.
Replacing the 10, I mean.
Yes.
We're gaining space in other areas by striping, and even with the loss of the 2 spaces in front of the Historical Society.
So.
still gonna be a net gain.
So part of that asterisk on the 148 under existing geometry is when there's no striping on the street for parking, you could obviously get a lot more parking in there, depending on the width of the car, or the length of the car that particular day. So I would venture to guess, and that's why I put an asterisk there, that that is the best number, the highest number that we really could gather, the 148. I would think that on any given day, it's probably, 140, 135. It is a lot less.
Because people are leaving horrible space between cars, and it's just
Yes,
a mess.
and so when we have a formulated parking, usually a parallel parking space is anywhere from 20 feet to 23 feet. We typically use 22, but when we have a long curb line that we deal with, we actually vary parking spaces so that you could get, if indeed, right, we were at the verge of getting another parking space in, then we would vary some of the other parking spaces by a foot or 2 so that we can get that extra parking space in. And that's what we did here as well, if we can get it from a parallel standpoint. So, again, when we start looking at, just zoom out a little bit more, we also wanted to keep the parking on the north side of Lower King, and that mainly was to line up vehicles if you do intend to actually have this a 2-way. When the vehicles leave and go that way, you could see basically from here, they really want to be aligned to go up King, right? So if parking were to be on the south side, then this really would have a really poor alignment, because now the vehicle would basically be here and have to veer over. So that was really the main reason, that was the main reason why we chose to put it on the north side. And so before I go on to the other 2 slides that talk about turning movement, if anyone had any questions on this particular plan that's here.
Well, I feel like we're having 2 different conversations here tonight, because, one of them really has to do with the current ongoing downtown infrastructure project. And, I almost feel like we should separate those 2 conversations, because I know a lot of people who are here are interested in discussing the 2-way traffic on Lower King Street, which is a really important policy conversation, but we have a really important conversation about the project that's going on right now, and I want to understand whether, Bob, you feel like you have all of the information that you need at this point from Lou's analysis in order to be able to put together the change orders, to move forward with our traffic engineers, with our construction firm on putting together the change orders that'll be needed to make these changes, or if there's additional analysis with regard to the intersection of King and Center Street that needs to happen in order to move that forward.
That's a good point, because it's critical the town board approves the curb geometry along Center Street on the east and west side, heading down towards North and South Greeley, because once that curb line is approved, and I think Lou did a fine job giving us the AutoCAD information, which we then can provide to the contractor and Boswell to have them go ahead with their change order, because it's critical we give them the go-ahead as ASAP,
Yeah.
because there's a long lead time on the granite curbing.
Yes.
So if the town board decides, and hopefully they'll approve the Center Street geometry tonight, Jill and I can start going and moving forward with the change orders and provide this information to ELQ.
Right, so
And
before-
also, too, we have to submit this up to the state for their
Yeah.
approval, and I don't think the state will be that concerned about it. Besides, I had prior conversations with Ann Darrelius. Matter of fact, when we met her last week, I gave her a preliminary copy of Lou's plan, and because we're widening out the street from 12 to 15, they would have no problem as far as traffic and safety, because obviously it's making it much safer.
But we will in fact need their formal approval before we go forward. We can't imagine they're going to have an issue with it, and said as much, but, so we have done the preliminary. As soon as the state gives us a little bit, again, we would probably pass it to Leo if it, ELQ and Boswell to start with the change orders, but forgive me, I had to just walk out for a second. I just want to make sure that you had copies of the memo and the drawings.
Okay.
But is the board okay? Does the board have any questions? We're restoring the 4 spots. We're bringing in the curb line. We still have ample sidewalk. It's at the quote-unquote, I was going to say
Yeah, I'll go
choke
back
point.
to that. Sorry.
Besides the curb lines, what are the, so we would have to order new granite curbing and, a change order to I'm having trouble
Well, it's
speaking.
going to
Re-implement.
Right, so
Delay the new curbing,
it's
right?
going to be to remove the temporary that we've put in.
Yes,
And then to take and reinstall along the new drawings.
So, besides curbing, is there other work that's associated with making these changes? So, do we have to do Con Ed pole removal?
There was always going to be Con Ed pole removal, and we sort of stopped them dead in their tracks because once it became obvious that we couldn't keep the curb line that was there, we asked Con Ed to hold off on it. We were originally going to change 2 poles. One was going to be the one at the corner of this Historical Society, but now that sidewalk is being brought in, the pole that's there is existing, it's not bothering anybody, we would literally be putting it back in the same spot, so we're leaving it. The next pole, however, right around Ibiza and Family Bridges, is still remains in the middle of the street. So
That was always been moved.
So as soon as, we have approval of the new curb line, we would bring that back to Con Ed and ask them to start putting in the work that they need to do to pull that one utility pole out to the curb line, so it's not in the middle of our sidewalk.
That's not a change order, that was work that was already
Yeah.
going to happen. So
Yes,
that's not-
yes, but-
I'm trying to understand what are the additional costs that we're going to see come before us associated with change orders.
It's
we're
going
gonna
to
need
be removal of the curbing in front of the Historical Society, that
Yeah.
curbing that was put in, that's gonna have to be all ripped out, and reordering that.
Yep.
And also, there's one other thing, look, I'm using my pointer. Oh, I
It's
got it on
blinding
Jeremy's
me a little
head by accident.
Don't turn around, you're gonna get your eyes pulled out.
Then we had to do something with the drainage over here, where we're basically putting another drainage thing.
Basically, Robert, to answer your question, unfortunately, the catch basins have been put in, but there's an easy fix. Piping has been put in. Basically, what they do is they remove the frame and the curb piece, and they'll put a new drainage structure along the new curb line and connect the pipes there too. So it's gonna be an additional cost as far as a unit cost overrun, but there is a practical solution to it. There'll be 2 instances for that.
Lou, I'm sorry, you done, I agree with your,
Yes, thank you, I'm sorry.
Lou, I recall you mentioning a concern about from 3 to 4 spaces with a line of sight or sight line coming out of center, looking downtown towards Greeley.
Right. Yep.
The concern was that cars might have to creep out further. It seems that you fix it in terms of the radius for trucks and fire engines, whatever it may be, to pull in, but regular everyday traffic, did you foresee that being a problem?
Coming out of center, making the left?
Either way, you have to look to your left.
Yeah, the sight lines are fine. The sight lines are completely fine.
Okay.
And I brought up the truck turning templates. I can go back to that if.
Well, they look sufficient, but I had a recollection of your concern initially going from 4 to 3 and then back to 4.
Yeah, so that's the 4, and then this is the 3. And so the 3 really just pushes this back a little bit, and it has the striping, and we push this out a little bit. So in looking at it, we definitely have enough. Which way am I going? Let me go back to the 4.
Back to the 4.
We definitely have enough. We have no striping that's here because we're at the curve, where it starts to curve, which is fine, and then we cut this back a little bit. So we could definitely get 4 in, and as you could see, right, this one's 20, this one's 22, 22, and 20. So that fits, and it's varied to some degree.
Okay, and the sidewalk at the narrowest, so that would be like in front of
Yeah.
Phyllis's, still remains at 15 and a half feet?
Right,
Which is pretty ample, and then 40 at the Ibiza.
yes.
Okay.
And so that other graphic was a look at how trucks would maneuver.
Yeah.
And so, from this perspective, we're looking at trucks making the right-hand turn. I'll zoom in a little bit. Trucks making the right-hand turn are definitely within the roadway. The blue line is the curb line. And so Bob and I talked about this for a while, a little bit. And so when we do truck turning templates, you can have vehicles enter onto the other side of the roadway for a short period of time or a short distance that is acceptable. Bob then said, well, how much is acceptable? And usually they could take up half the lane. So sometimes we would bring the stop bar back so that a truck turn could make it. In this case, we don't need to do that. And I wouldn't want to, because then, and this is going to be all under signal control anyway. So I think for the most part, or for like all of it, trucks can make this maneuver, making the right turn, or making the right turn coming down and making this right turn. I won't talk about these turns, so we could just focus in on what's happening going up and down, and I think in and out also from Center Street. So if there was a fire truck or heavy vehicle that needed to go down, you can see how it clips the stop bar here, but again, it's not going to be an issue as far as a truck coming down this roadway. This truck, because it's not exactly a 90-degree, would have to swing out to make this. And so we wanted to keep this in so that when the truck does swing out, it's still on the correct side of the double yellow line. And that's partially the reason why we have this striped out and the curb line back to this point.
Practically speaking, how many trucks are going down center?
Right, there
I
aren't
mean,
that
not-
many.
Not
Not
many,
many,
but this
but
way
I-
a fire truck can
Yeah, I
make
still
it
need to
without
run that,
problems.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah. We want to make sure that we weren't unnecessarily creating a choke point.
I won't go
So-
into that.
I know that there are certain areas you don't want to go to, but one of the things we were very concerned about is that the remaining curb lines within the limits of our downtown infrastructure. We're just very concerned that there were no other alterations that needed to be made to the WSP plans, because now would be the time to make them. So we've identified these as modifications that we needed to make. We're good. What about the turn coming from South Greeley up the King Street Hill? Is that okay?
That's okay, yeah.
Okay, and also from King Street Hill to North Greeley, is
Yeah,
that going
that-
to be okay? Those
that's
curves
okay
are all
also,
fine?
yeah.
Okay.
Now, how about coming down and making a left? Because that is a little bit of a problem now.
You know what, we didn't even run that, because that should be perfectly fine. Because this is really whoops, This is really a wide turn.
Yeah.
I mean, a wide area that could, if you just take,
trucks getting stuck there all the
if
time.
you could, and maybe that's because of
Stop
the,
line is pushed way far back from where it is now, so the.
and also
But
maybe
there's no
because
stop
of
line
the,
now.
The little
the
island.
little pork chop that you
Island
have
is there, they can't pull
Yeah.
wide.
It's pork chop.
Yeah, the pork chop, is that what it's called?
Pork chop, that's what we call it, yeah.
Starbucks.
Pork chop's like right here.
And also Lou, on North Greeley, I noticed that there's some red hatch. Are those, is that
that's
currently
just
where
striping.
parking? Yes, but is there currently parking there? I'm just wondering if that is also problematic
Not
to the
that
current
close.
situation. Yeah, I think they go like.
Currently parking?
Yeah, is
Maybe
there
one
currently
spot.
parking?
There it might, the current parking may go to here.
Yeah, I think we're moving it in a little bit to give people more room
Yeah.
to make that turn there.
And, part of this, what I like to do also at an intersection is to have some areas where you can temporarily store snow, to have a little bit of room in different places is also a good thing. And we typically would not want to have, in the first 25 feet at least, a parking space because of sight lines.
Yeah.
And you can see, because if a truck does turn here, and looking at the width of the parking space, you really can't have a parking space. And this truck turning template really designates where the parking should begin and the striping should end.
And you're comfortable with the width of that street?
Yeah. These are 10-foot lanes. We have 8-foot parking on either side. It's not, obviously it's not as heavy as King. This should be totally fine as far as the volume that's coming up and down.
Jill, is that our road or is that?
That's ours.
That's
This
all,
is yours.
that's all
Yeah.
ours.
That's a town road, right?
So we can, in theory, if we wanted to, also prevent trucks from using that as a delivery, being the concern of anyone who's going up to Whole Foods, anyone's going up, that's
Oh, you've
not
got
cutting
the
through our
post
town.
office.
Well, and that's separate,
Yeah.
but anything servicing Chapel Crossing, if there's backed up traffic or anything like that cutting through town,
Oh, I see, except for, I think the signs are
coming off of
already on
117
that.
south, or north, or south.
Only local deliveries, certainly on Maple, there are no trucks except for, that's really got the steep
It's a pretty steep road
incline.
also to get up with
Yeah,
a truck.
I think
mean,
trucks
they
would have
could,
trouble
but-
with it, but yeah, certainly, we can restrict truck traffic along there to local deliveries only.
It'd always be a tough left turn to come out of that road, once you get up the hill.
Yeah, that is, unless you're the first one, yeah, that would be okay. Okay, and, so the turns at Woodburn and Greeley, that was all fine? I just want to make sure that whatever curbing and whatever curb lines that have been set right now, that we double check them and that, right? Was it?
Sorry, we didn't ask him to do that, that wasn't in the scope. for it.
No, we didn't go that far?
No.
Okay, so it was just here? That's fine, good,
No.
great. All right.
But again, getting back to Ivy's point, if they can be approved, we can get going on this. And I was
Okay.
thinking the
So
same.
we're good with the four spots?
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut off the other conversation. I
No,
just wanna make sure we-
So we're good with the force, it's important that we get a decision on this so
Yeah.
that we can move. Okay.
When I was saying nothing's being done tonight, I was referring to Lower King,
Right.
which I know is first of all, not only is it
Yeah,
an issue
what
that
we're
needs.
proving has nothing to do
not
with
only-
Lower King right now.
Not only is it an issue that needs more discussion, but it also needs more
Study.
traffic study, as far as the impact of the train station, the impact of Woodbine, the impact of Washington Avenue. It's a much bigger conversation than just striping and, changing the paint on the road.
All right, so we have a resolution for this, right?
We just make the resolution
at the end of the.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we don't need a resolution, I just need your approval that you guys are good to go with this, we're going with the four. So if is there a final CAD that Lou needs to create, or we're good to go?
I don't know if you need a signed and sealed drawing for this, so we'll talk about that.
For New York State, yeah, for whatever New York State DOT needs, because it's gonna be a resubmission to them, and then also, to ELQ in Boswell,
Yes.
okay?
We'll get moving on it tomorrow.
Great,
So-
okay,
And so
fabulous.
the good thing about what we've done here is that we did all of this analysis during the winter, so that these change orders can go through and get approved and get implemented prior to when the work starts up again. We haven't lost any time.
Exactly right, exactly right.
So Lou, not to jump ahead, but just to move things along. What would be the next, and I know it's in your report, so I'm sort of setting you up. Thank you. What would be the next steps for Lower King?
So Lower King, here's Lower King, right? And we did talk about having it two-way, the potential of having it two-way, just from a striping standpoint, just from a width standpoint, and the number of parking spaces,
So
right?
you did not change the design that WSP gave for the curb lines or anything else on the street?
I think we did not change anything on that. Let me just make sure, yeah, they're in the same spot.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So that there's no changes?
So, yeah, so whatever you do at the corner and down here really doesn't change at all.
Wasn't there a bump out, like, are we gonna have to push back the curb in front of Starbucks or no?
They did that already, just to leave the option open.
No,
That
we
was part of the
did
plan.
it just because of turning radii and stuff like that. It's
Yeah.
the same way that bumps were, we realized that bumps were problems, that's why, yeah.
Okay. So, more so than even the design, which I guess this would potentially be the design if we decided to go two-way, what are your thoughts about making that two-way?
So, this might be tougher to see. So, we started to look at, number one, you obviously can do it and you have the room to do it. And between the two areas, there's really no loss of parking spaces, although people would have to walk a little bit more. The second part is, well, who would actually utilize it? And the first area is the entire parking field that's behind the retail, up against the overpass structure. I'm sure almost all the people that are going in any direction would rather come out and make the right turn or to continue straight and go up King. The next question is, well, how many, other people, what percentage of this area of the parking field would also utilize it? And that really is a function of what the resistance or traffic queue or congestion is at Woodbine when you start to come out. And so we started thinking about, right now, in this memo, we have no changes. We only assume that the areas that are in orange would actually utilize the change in direction. But I suspect that there is some portion of this that would also think that this is an easier way to go. And there might be a little bit more depending on if this is an easier path to travel and you're going straight up King, then it might be. But if your destination is to go to the south, if you're in this area, this is still an easier path to make this right turn and come out. But certainly if you're in the parking field, then you're going to probably continue to come out here.
Lou, let me just interject for 1 second. Besides the people exiting the commuter parking lot and using that exit, and this is probably something it may be very difficult to quantify, but there's a ton of residents that will avoid going down Lower King Street between the hours of 4 and 7 p.m., Monday through Friday, for fear of getting stuck in the train commuter traffic.
Right, and
Something-
I agree with you 100%, and that's the other point, is that you're kind of forced to go through the entire train station, right, to basically come back out.
And that could be a 10-minute backup. If you're exiting when the train just pulls up, you just bought yourself 10 minutes of traffic to get out.
Yes. So, I mean, I think part of looking at what percentage of the main parking field would go in this direction and utilize it is something that we would like to get a better handle on. Circulation pattern in and around the semicircles. We'd also like to comment on maybe they could be changed to better have circulation and pick up and drop off. But the end result is, what was that?
It feels endless. It's like the
So the end result, though, is Oh, yeah, I had a point. The end result is, and people in my office were saying, well, how can we estimate how many people would come out and utilize the two-way? And I think it's not a question of how many people would do it, it's how many people could. And I take that from the point of view, how many vehicles can we process through this movement at the intersection signal? And that really tells us how many people you can let. So, for instance, if we have the ability of 400 vehicles in an hour to utilize this approach, then it could be up to 400. And if it was 200, then it's a question of, well, is it worth it from a circulation standpoint? And I think just by looking at the traffic signal that's proposed, there's certainly an ability to have this fourth leg in here. But I take that
Can I
with,
ask you one other question?
Yep.
Which is, so, right now there's a traffic officer at the intersection of Woodbine and South Greeley. And you've got the big ball field parking lot at the back, and people exit out around Town Hall, go by the
Woodburn.
library.
Huh?
It's Woodburn.
It's Woodburn,
Yeah.
right?
It's okay.
Yeah.
I never changed it on the graphic, sorry.
Yeah, that's
It's
what I
Woodburn.
thought, okay.
So,
It's Woodburn.
anyways, people go all the way
I was just
around.
reading it,
I
sorry.
suspect they would still do that, but one of the things that ends up happening, one of the things I'd be curious about learning is not only the could do it, but also just that intersection of Woodburn and South Greeley, whether you're heading north, whether you're heading south, whether you're trying to pick up a loved one, whether you're trying to go to the bank on the other side of the street, is just, I mean, you've got cars turning left, cars turning right, cars going through, the whole thing. So I'd be interested to know, not just at the point of Allen Place and at that traffic light intersection, but also further down, what the downstream impact is,
Of having this two-way?
and having coordinated light signals, or having, some
There's
sort of
only one light.
coordination, so that if you want to go east versus the people that are coming north, how that would end up happening. I think it'd be interesting to understand how it would potentially either alleviate or aggravate that situation.
Well, it can't aggravate it, it's gonna,
Yeah, I think you would end up having less volume on Woodburn, got that right? Because of the ability to actually come up here and go up
But I'm
King
also
Street.
talking about the people that circle around the entire thing.
Yes, and you would have less of that.
And right.
You would definitely have less
And
of
whether
that.
the traffic light timing in and of itself, if it was a smart light or whatever you ended up calling it, could.
Which one, the one at Woodburn or the new one at King?
The new one at King.
The new one at King,
I thought that was a smart light.
well, it's smart in the sense that there should be loop detectors, yes. It should be similar.
And I thought it could adjust to the timing and sort
It
of
should,
learn.
yes, it should do
We should double
that.
check that if we're not confident.
This light should do that. I will double check, but I remember looking at the timing and the actual electrical plan, and
I
there
mean,
were
why
loop
wouldn't we put
detectors
that
there.
in there, It's
Yeah.
straight there.
I just wanted to confirm, if you go back to the aerial shot, that, I just want to confirm that there was no thought that the back parking lot, which is further south, is not going to be allowed to go all the way.
The Tertia Brook Bridge.
Yeah,
I know it's one way, I
Yeah.
know, I just
No,
want to
no,
make,
it's just not what, no, no.
I
they
just
have
want to make sure that there's no thought that we're.
Yeah, I
now
You can always make a
not
bigger
two-way.
sign.
I
You can
wouldn't
make a
want to,
bigger sign.
I would not advocate for that.
Okay.
Couldn't, I don't think you could
you know,
do it.
by the way,
Do not enter.
the Shell
Yeah.
station calls it Woodbine Avenue. If you Google it, all the stuff about the Shell, it says Woodbine Avenue. But then it is referred to as Woodburn also.
Well, I think if we work on this project, we will rename it Sam Avenue.
Samway.
Samway. Yes.
The way.
It's in Shamway.
Lose way.
The last part of this is, so if you did have another approach here, right? It would have to be what we call a split phase. It would not go at the same time as Lower King, just because, of King, just because there's so much more volume on King making the left turn. That's the state route. So it's not anticipated that would have, anything near the same volume as King. So it would be a split phase. It's the phasing and timing would still work. The intersection
Well, I
would
don't know
still
what
operate.
split phase means.
So normally what happens is that both sides would go at the same time. So this approach and this approach, eastbound and westbound approaches would go at the same time. Like 117 at Roaring Brook, northbound and southbound go at the same time, but one has a lead phase. And it might be the same way, whereas this westbound approach of King would have a lead phase, so that you get most of this left turning out, and then this phase would start. So it would be split in that sense.
You're also potentially alleviating some of the concerns, if you can get people in that back lot, of those who are coming over the bridge and going northbound, who try to shoot across as people are going southbound on Greeley, and people are coming over the bridge. You're taking
Yeah.
some of those people who are going southbound to go straight and park in
Right.
the back and come back out.
Yep, that's true.
So is there a place on your plan
Which one?
where
The other one?
the go back to the streets, where you show all the parking lots, parking spots, a little more
Oh, you want this?
west? No,
this
yeah,
one?
yeah. Just out of curiosity, is there, one thing that, could be helpful with it two ways is if someone wanted to pick up dinner or something like that, they would have an option to stop as opposed to having to go around the whole
Absolutely.
circle. But just out of curiosity, is there a place where people could pull in closer to Lower King for like,
Here?
to run in type thing, where it's like a 5-minute parking or 2-minute parking? They have some spots like that in Pleasantville where it's really someone just running in to pick something up. Is that
That'd be your decision.
possible?
I mean,
No, not
it's-
on those spots, not to make those spots 5 minutes. I'm just
Right, on
wondering
this
if they're
side.
like
Spots here.
an additional little area someone could, that's not a permanent spot,
Where
but
it's
someone could
hatched,
pull
could you do
in.
it? Where
You
it's
mean
striped?
on Lower King itself, or in this back area?
Or in that hatched area or something.
You could make those.
In this area? We really couldn't do it in this area.
Or what about?
It's not deep enough.
Enough room.
I mean, some of these parking spaces could certainly be, a 5 to 10 minute parking area. And we just couldn't have anything along this side of Lower
No,
King.
not
It's just not enough.
Is there anything that prevents us from expanding the current parking lots to additional spaces? So for example, if you look down at the bottom, there's an arrow. What's the width there? Is there anything that would prevent us to add another 4 spaces?
You probably would be able to pick up one, maybe just 2 spaces. This space would be too tight for this turn, because these are still all two-way travel aisles.
Gotcha.
Well, you know where you could put spaces, because frankly, everyone parks there anyway, is now that little walkway is now gonna be pedestrian only. We're not allowing cars in that walkway
Here?
between the buildings. No,
Here.
No,
to
the other
your right,
side.
to your right.
Now, let me use
Oh,
my
here.
pointer.
Yes,
What's
there.
this? Right there.
That's now pedestrian only. We're not
Where is it?
allowing cars to go in there. So, give me the pointer. So, how do you make that work? So right here,
There you go.
people park here anyway. You could probably pick up a decent amount of spots right here.
Yeah, we can.
I park there.
Did Nick leave?
Nope, right here.
Oh, hey, all right. Was there any reason why we can't add more spots?
Nick's back there.
Was there a regulation of some sort that prevented us from adding more spots? Because it looks like there's certainly a lot of places to park.
And if that's pedestrian, why can't we could kind of block that with a
Is
spot
that where
or two,
everybody
right?
puts their garbage?
No,
No,
No.
the garbage is in the,
in that back
Garbage
corner.
here.
along the bridge.
Thanks, guys.
There are bins there.
So there's not,
We have to check the deeds to the property, but I don't think there's
Yeah.
anything that prevents us from doing so, no. Subject to that, I don't believe there is anything.
But it is gonna be
I mean, we
pedestrian.
could do that regardless of anything we
So we
do on
could take
King
and ask Lou
Street.
to relay it out for us to see
We
if
could
we
add a
can
few
have
more
more.
spots there.
Because we were hoping that when we did this, that we would take and repave that Allen Place parking lot, and since, we're
Because
gonna be there.
Yeah, but to put a few more spots there and have that be a nice walking area in between to get you onto Lower King is nice.
All right, so, and I'm not sure, but I will look at this. The other option is,
in
and
the
I'm
bottom,
not
just the
sure.
bottom of the page.
What was that?
Just the bottom, right, yeah, right where
Yeah,
the land
right.
is. No,
But-
down, like that area.
There is parking there.
There's parking here.
No, just to the right, now,
There
keep on
is
going.
parking.
Yeah.
There's parking
There's
all along
parking there too.
I don't know that it's as organized as.
But then it curves down, it's a slope.
I mean, the other point that I wanted to make is that I'm not sure how tied you are
It's a little
to
tight.
doing any of these. But if we change this to one-way angle parking, we might be able to pick up additional spaces, an additional row. But there's the trees or light poles? I forget.
I don't, are there trees there anymore?
There's something there.
There had been islands.
How
but I
many,
don't
how
think-
many,
It might be light poles.
Oh, maybe the light
Might be
poles.
light poles.
how many spaces are you talking about?
I think you could probably pick up another row.
That's a lot of
Can I interject
spaces.
something? Can I say anything?
Yeah, of course.
You see those two little islands right there, those little, keep going up right there, yep?
Yep.
That's where the trucks park when they deliver to me. They can't come around
Got
behind the
it.
store. So the giant 18-wheelers who hit this, one way hit the curb in front of my store in the corner. You look at the railroad ties that I put in, they smash them every year. When it navigates that turn, it'll park along parallel to where those little islands are on the left.
And it
That's
takes
where
the
they
whole
park.
road, whole road for the one truck.
Yeah, I mean, your trucks kind of park right next to the building.
No, he's saying they can't make the turn.
They can't make
No,
the
when they
turn.
come around, they basically have to
Park
stop
right there,
here.
right where he is, yeah.
Because they won't be able to come down and make the turn to
How
go
are you
back
gonna have
out.
two
They do
lanes?
that
I don't get
now.
It takes up the whole road just
I
for
know,
one
it
truck to
does.
turn one.
Yeah, those streets are big.
And your drawing there,
I've gotten
Like every
stuck
day.
in
show how
there.
that truck, how those turning radiuses is only one way. You haven't drawn them on the two-way. It's
No,
a
you
two-way
drew one
street.
two-way.
No, it is a
That's
two-way.
Yeah, well,
Two-way
this
right
is,
now?
this is two-way, so they wouldn't, two trucks would not be able to go past each other at the same time. That's right. That's what this shows,
Well, we don't
right?
have two trucks
Right,
going
so-
past each other usually in there.
We get a lot of
It only has to happen once.
No, but so only one truck could fit?
At
and you
the
guys
same
say-
one time, right, at the same
That's-
time.
That makes sense, I guess.
But when an 18-wheeler is delivering, it's gonna be parking there and blocking an entire one
both
direction
ways,
lane.
yeah, both ways.
So with that
Well, it
information,
can't
if,
stop there now in the middle of the street anyway, it's one
No,
way.
no,
what we do
no.
now.
I make them
Parks
park,
behind.
generally they park.
Yeah.
a little bit further up.
Backwards, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
because that's the only place you could put a big truck like that.
Okay, but that's a 23-foot parking lane you explained? So,
Yeah, I mean, with that information and to know exactly how this operates in the back from a delivery standpoint, I would say that it's probably beneficial to take this island out and actually create a zone, a loading and unloading zone here. Just so that you get it out of.
Pull right into.
You just pull right in, right? They would be here. You'd probably lose, you may not even lose these two spaces, but you would lose the island and it would become, you could not just do a striped island, you could do a mountable, curb with brick pavers on top, so it doesn't look as it's just striped asphalt. But at least there's an area for the truck to actually stage. And I just have to look at how that could work by blocking one of these aisles, which would probably be the middle one, right? So if we did it and it was blocking the middle aisle, then people can still get out on either side, and you could still have one large area for loading and
Vinny,
unloading.
how long do your trucks usually stay there for?
A week?
No.
We're fast,
No, they move
But,
fast, but they gotta work.
But we check it thoroughly, that's the key,
You gotta check
It's your-
it.
It's like, if you're a carpenter, measure twice, cut once. So we spend the time checking the image, the load, the quality, and then we send them off so we don't have to come back. But I have anywhere from 6 to 8 trucks deliver a day, not tractor trailers. But anything from a 28-foot box truck to a van to a giant, like tomorrow I have a company called K. I'm gonna take a picture tomorrow.
But that's the bigger issue, the bigger truck. A van is not the issue.
Yeah,
A
but
small
no one
box
really-
truck is not the
I don't
issue.
have vans generally, but there's a lot of trucks that deliver. And now, again, Rob knows I hate the two-way street, but that's a different story. That's not what I'm even arguing about. How are they gonna navigate that turn, like I think it's,
Lou.
Lou said, only one person come at a time. Okay, so one
Yes.
truck if it's coming from either one way or the other way, it's gonna come, and then an average resident's gonna be coming the other way,
Someone has to.
and someone's gonna stop and not keep going forward. And that radius is pretty tight. How you can have a giant truck just stop with all that parking and have another car coming the other way?
I mean, we might need to restrict truck traffic to only going the one way, the way they go now. Instead of being
Right, so they
two
can't come
ways.
back
What he's
now.
saying
Come
is
down
the
this
turning
way.
radius is very tight on that, go back.
Yeah, but it's the same turning radius.
Not
We're
up
not
there, go
changing the
right.
width
It
of the
doesn't make
street.
if you make a left onto
Doesn't matter
our
if it's one way
place.
or not, it still has the potential for a head-on collision
Yeah.
with a car,
I
is
think
what
that's-
Vinny's saying.
I mean, even
How-
at a
It's not
60-degree
moving
angle,
very
it's
fast. It's, I mean, it's barely, you're not taking that.
Oh, that's a
According
big
to
truck,
that-
well, there you
It
go.
would still, it would still infringe on the other lane.
But which is permissible from what you've shared before, and you're,
Yes,
the
it is.
speed of that turn can't be but a couple miles per hour.
Yes,
But
you
what's
you can't really
permissible
take this
for a fire
turn.
truck in an emergency situation versus what's permissible 6 to 8 times a day are different, right?
So can't the truck going, whatever direction, to the train station impinge upon the striped area a little bit more?
Yes, and it is really tough to see, I apologize for that, but this is the center line here, and this line is the truck turning
I see.
in that direction.
really
So
not
it comes over probably, 3 or 4 feet, which is significant. So, I mean, if a passenger vehicle is coming around this turn at the same time a truck is trying to make this turn, they're each doing, 5 miles an hour. I mean, they can't really be doing 10 miles an hour just because it's
Not
a
gonna make the
90-degree turn. So you would be able to see, it probably, it could be an issue. I think there are other things that you could put up, and you probably have seen them, where you have a mirror at some point, so both places or both drivers can see. If this is something that the board, would like to have additional information, I mean, we could certainly try to make the truck turning a little bit better, but that would mean taking out 2 of these parking spaces, because the only reason why we don't infringe on the striped area more with the truck turn is because we need to get back to clear that parking space.
It also seems like, yeah.
By the way, I mean, the current.
I think it's also if what you could do is make sure that the truck traffic could only head west, because it also looks like the truck that's heading,
South.
yeah.
Yeah, that-
West and south, the truck that's heading north and east is infringing even more.
Yeah, it is a tougher movement. It's a sharper angle, that's why.
The point he was making, though, is if there's several cars coming from the train station toward King,
At the same time,
the truck is going, now they have to back up. And if there's 3 or 4 cars there, you're now gonna have 3 or 4 cars that have to figure out how to back up while the truck makes that turn.
I'm not sure that's
It's
necessarily
so
true
slow,
by
it's
looking
not
at
gonna-
that drawing, because a car is not as big as that truck, so the car would not have the same turning radius.
No,
These
but
are
he
2
can't,
trucks.
the car cannot pass the
Trucks.
truck when it's making the turn.
Lou, what about cutting that, can you go zoom in a little bit?
Am I wrong?
Is it possible to cut that curb just a hair, right, and
This
sla-
one would
yeah,
help a little
And then
bit.
slash it so that people can't, so it gives you more of a
Here,
turn.
this corner? Yeah.
Even if it's a foot or 2.
That would help a little bit, but it's not going to completely solve the problem.
Jeremy, one thing I have to be honest with, I think it's somewhat laughable. You said that your presentation is, we're only assuming that the people behind my store is gonna use that exit. That's not why anyone's doing this. We're trying to alleviate traffic in one spot and shove it in another spot.
I'm gonna respond to
that's
that.
not
My
correct,
response to that, I go to Villarinas with regularity. And it drives me up a wall that I have to drive. If I can't find a spot in those first 3 or 4 spots and you come down King, I don't wanna go either park in the back a lot, and I don't wanna go, if I'm going, my wife comes to you to get stuff, and I don't like to go through and have to go all the way circumvent the train station and go out the Bell, deal with the Bell traffic, especially if school's coming out. So if I'm coming down King, if I know I could park in the back, you better believe I'm more inclined to go park there and walk out than I am to go drive all the way around. I know we have to shoot all the way around the parking lot or all the way to the back parking lot. I'd be so much more inclined to shop.
That orange, that's not the whole purpose of anyone liking this is to get out of the train parking lot.
But it's not gonna help the people in the back
That's-
lot. The
that's
vast
one-
majority, it's not gonna help.
That's one benefit to it. The main benefit is that people who are going on Lower King Street and accessing all the stores there can actually leave the same exact way they came without having to go to the train station and possibly get stuck in 10-minute traffic. It's a problem. By the way, it's a problem even without, like, Lower King. Like, for instance, when Dunkin' Donuts used to be around and actually open past 6 o'clock, because at one point they used to close at 6, and if I wanted to get a cup of coffee for like a town board meeting, I wouldn't even do it, because I'd pull out of the train station, have to pull into Dunkin' Donuts, and now I have to go through the train station again to get out and possibly get stuck in traffic. Like, that was for Pizza Station and for Dunkin' Donuts. The whole traffic thing is a problem that all cars cannot get out on Lower King, that you're always forced through the train station and have to hit traffic from 4 to 7 p.m. It's a problem throughout that whole area. It's not just about.
Traffic when the school gets
Yeah,
out.
I
it's
will
a
say, there
problem.
are times where I've gone, especially to you, it's like 6 o'clock, I realize I have nothing to make for dinner, and I want to stop and get some meat from you, and if there's not a spot right in front of, where Starbucks is, I won't come because I don't want to come down Lower King and then get stuck for a half an hour trying to get back out because everyone's commuting and trying to get out also.
I hear what you're saying, I'm there, day in and day out.
You're not the one getting stuck in the traffic, that's the point.
My
You're not in that
opinion-
traffic.
My opinion is I'm gonna see more traffic now in front of my store.
A
Because
lot of people
everyone's
think
gonna
that's a
be
good
at
thing.
that light, just standing in front of my store, trying to get out. And it's gonna be, the same traffic you have in a different spot is now you're gonna take 10%, 8%, whatever number a computer wants to spit out. It's certainly not gonna be just that orange area. It's now gonna be in front of my store and trying to get out.
But
And
that's,
that's gonna prevent you from coming to my store just as fast.
isn't that,
Anyway.
a lot of stores pay a pretty nice premium to be by an exit to a train station,
Yes,
like
I know
Pizza
that.
Station, for
That's what you
instance.
said over and over again.
But that's
I don't
not
have
my
to agree with
opinion,
that.
it's just,
That's
look at the
right,
real
it's your
estate, ask a real estate
Let's not-
person.
let's not argue
So
about that.
the question is whether or not the board would like Lou to pursue any additional studies regarding Lower King and the circulation.
And Woodburn.
Well, can I ask Laura a question? Sure. Since I know, I know you had mentioned that potentially losing the spots that are directly in front of your store would be very detrimental to business. Now, is that true even if they're even if we can pick up spots, a half a block down?
I
Because
think it
there's
would.
not enough room. I mean, many times, if I want to come to Scattered Books, I'm still parking behind because
know.
there are no spots in front. There's not that many spots.
There's a lot of double parking, that goes on with Starbucks, and I think this plan, there'll be a lot of, honking, a lot of issues. The parties we do, when there's no spots, my party business goes down 40%. I mean, I can't even tell you that. I would rather have the 16 spots on the street than 25 around the corner, because this plan will kill me.
But the 16 spots are not vacant waiting for your parties.
that's-
Like,
that's
they're
the part that's
usually
really-
A lot of them are
pretty,
in and out, there's a lot of dropping
Yeah.
off of kids that go on, people don't wanna drop off their 3-year-old a block and a half away. You
Right,
know,
no, I
They
understand.
pull in, we come out and get them, and it's
So when-
honestly is like, kinda like a death blow. to
Well,
my store.
Laura, when you compare it to the time you didn't have parking, has there been any other time you didn't have parking besides this past winter, when there was a backhoe parked on your street, half the road was dug up, there were construction barriers in the road, and it looked like the road was closed? Has there been any other time that you're comparing it to when you didn't have parking in Lower King for your analysis, the saying that it'd be the death blow?
Well,
Because, I mean,
There
there's
was no other time
about
that-
15 stores on your street, and there's 16 spots, and every store acts like it's those spots that keep them in business, and I'm not a mathematician, but it just seems to me that, by the way, I never get any of those spots, ever. They're never available, and I'm still going to the
you
stores.
never shop in my store, so.
Well, I'm not a big reader. But
You should join the police
the
department.
fact is, I don't have time to read, and when I start reading, I fall asleep. But putting that aside, the point is, though, I never get a spot. It just seems to me that all these stores, and there's like 15 stores in the street that are sharing these 16 spots, and and then it's not like cars are parking on top of each other. I mean, how many spots are your customers actually getting?
There's a lot of in and out, and a lot of the in and out, and during the time that there was no spots, I told my customers and had them fill out pages and pages of sheets that said they would not book a party if there was not spots available in front of the store. And that was it. And
But
that's
what if they're filled? I don't, like, you can't guarantee there are
It's
gonna
just
be
there's a much
spots
higher
in front of your
percentage
store.
of it.
No,
There's a
I'm
much
ju-
higher percentage, because there's all the in and out from Starbucks.
Right.
So even if they, wait a minute, there's always the in and out, and they could park, and they could pull in, they could drop off their stuff. You know, it's a lot of stuff with the little kids, things like that. I mean, I've had parents come in screaming, you know, I can't even get my kid to a birthday party. I've had to, like, deliver back to them their leftover cake. I've had to drive to their home to, you know, to bring it back, and you know, we've had our story time, you know, we had to cancel during that whole time because no one would park. They're little tiny kids that come in and they don't want to park around the corner. And I don't know why they don't want to park around the corner. I'm not that.
Wait a minute,
I've told them for a
wait a
long
minute, are you
time.
saying, let me make sure, I don't, unfortunately do not have children, so it's, but let me make sure I understand what you're saying, is when you throw the parties and, for the kids, the parents are dropping them off, and then you're kind of, sort of supervising and chaperoning the party with all the kids, reading books, doing things, and then they come and pick them up?
For the most part, unless they're
Is
under
that not
5.
something that can be anticipated?
What do you mean?
No.
What do you mean?
What
No,
about the
can't-
lot
why can't- I mean,
behind
if
your?
you know, for
who owns
example,
that?
that this is, whether it's this store or not, but let's say, for example, the store stays in business, you cannot create like a drop-off zone?
No, we
I mean, I'm not trying to be difficult.
Oh,
I
sure,
just
you could
kind of
do a
wanna
drop-off
see
zone, and
where-
or you could do 5-minute
You lose
parking
spots.
in the front,
You-
but
you might
then
lose spots, but
it's
I
not
agree with you.
long-term, it's not
It's not
long-term,
long-term,
it's
but
not an
I
hour.
agree, I mean, you know, when I go shopping there, the odds of getting a spot in front of,
But that goes for everything, we all know that.
Right.
yeah, in front of the Chappaqua Village Market, which is my goal, and as you know, I come very early in the
What
morning.
it is, everybody
Yeah.
knows that.
I come early in the morning just to like
Can I
maximize
just say-
even
let me
then or
just stop
not.
before-
Wait,
before
who
we
owns
got
that
here.
lot? Do we know?
Which lot? Things like that.
The lot that's next to
It's the-
Scattered
it's the
Books.
building.
It
Susan
belongs
Lawrence.
to 21 King
yeah,
Street
exactly.
Company, and they rent out all of the individual spots.
Right,
It's theirs,
Susan Lawrence.
and they charge quite a lot to have a spot, one of the 6 spots in there.
We need-
And the radius to come out of there is actually like a 90-degree
it's
angle
Yeah, no,
down,
it's tight, yeah.
which is with the cars parked right up against it, as opposed to angled. And that's a school bus stop.
So those
I don't even
spots,
know if they've been notified, like, I mean, if we didn't
well,
find out
nothing
from
is,
IB,
because
no one
nothing
would
is
know.
happening yet, this is just,
Yeah, that's the key. I would be home watching Judge Judy right now.
Really?
Exactly. If I didn't get a phone call from her. I mean, listen, I don't do this kind of stuff. When does someone, a town, decide we should ask a merchant?
well,
Well,
Vinny, I'm not,
resident.
first of all, just a couple things about notice, I'm sorry.
I apologize, I don't know.
One thing,
I'm
in my
ignorant.
supervisory report, I actually mentioned it in my last supervisory report, which I think was January 7th. It's going to be mentioned again in my supervisory report, which was tonight, but it's going to be published tomorrow. It was also on the agenda, so there was notice.
No, the agenda
about-
just said a
about
study, a
this.
traffic study.
It was also on Facebook, it was posted on
Yeah,
Facebook.
we
And it's
posted
gonna,
on Facebook.
and it's gonna continue to be talked about. And by the way, just so you know, I would like to hear the feedback from the merchants, there's no question about it. But in my opinion, and I'm just one person, you know, I'm not gonna base it on a vote of the merchants. This is a larger discussion about the downtown in general. There's a discussion about traffic flow. It's a discussion about the train station and trying to solve an ongoing problem with congestion at the train station. But more importantly for me, it's a discussion about the downtown in general and about traffic flow. And not having a three-legged thing, having a traffic flow in a perfect square. And by the way, if you do the research, like I've suggested on Facebook, you actually will see, and I'm not saying take my word for it, but just research, and I'll be happy to send you articles that talk about towns that are revitalizing themselves are actually turning one-way roads into two-way roads. That's out there. I'll be happy to send you the articles. So as we're looking to revitalize our downtown, these are things we have to look at. Laura, you're making a face. I will send you the article first thing in the morning.
Lots of
I think-
articles,
I
like the
think-
ones about giving away free bookmarks to enhance
I
my
think that
business.
if we're gonna.
I'm sorry that I'm trying to help your bookstore in
No,
this
I'm
quiet
just
town.
So,
being
look,
sarcastic.
I
don't-
think if we're talking about revitalizing our downtown, we definitely have to be considering the merchants, because if they're not there, we have nothing to really revitalize. But, my question for Nick, and I'm pretty sure I know the answer to this, if we decided as a town board, that this was something we were getting down the road and we wanted to pursue this, would we need to have a public hearing? Because if we're gonna make a road two ways instead of one way? I mean, we have public hearings when we wanna, like,
I don't believe
put
there's
no
any.
trucks allowed.
Right, I don't believe there's any requirement
changes.
because you're not
No.
changing the local law. I don't think there's the law that sets forth the direction of the road, so that would be the only requirement. Certainly it's
I
good
mean,
practice.
I think we
to do
should.
so.
I feel like we're kind of putting the
Yeah.
cart before the horse. I mean,
Thank you.
I
Definitely.
started off by saying I felt like we were kind of having two separate conversations tonight, and I wanted to decouple the one that was about Center Street, because it's important to move that forward. I mean, this was added in to, an analysis that needed to happen in order to move forward with the downtown infrastructure project as a conceptual look at something in order to be able to have future policy discussions. And Lou has identified in his memo to us, and I think maybe Lou, you should go over this at this point, but there are 5 things that you've identified as next steps that you're recommending that you would need to do in order to be able to have a more substantive conversation about that. And then I think the board needs to consider whether these 5 things are things that we want to add to a scope of work for Lou. And just looking at them, I don't think these are cheap. So I think we have to have a larger conversation about whether this is something we want to continue at this time, or do we have enough information that we can put into our files and come back to this at a time that may be more appropriate.
So, that being said, what my point was that we were, to build on that too, this is something we're just like considering now. It's not something that was going forward enough that we really felt like we need to involve everyone. I certainly, even if it's not required, if this was something we really felt like we wanted to consider and move down the line and we think it may be a great idea, I would absolutely want to make sure we had a public hearing to talk to merchants, to talk to residents, to make sure it's the right move.
Yeah, I agree, listen, it's not just about me, it's about the whole town, I get all that. And if, I haven't seen the old, I dealt with Adam Brodsky. The old rendition of making that turn was horrible, there's no, I don't know if you ever have an old.
I remember you used to complain about it.
There's no way a truck would have made that turn with a one-way. And I don't know if that ever was changed. But that, obviously that's what we're doing now. We've seen what happened with Center Street in front of Bridges. That was designed right on paper, but written work. So what you're doing, I understand that. As far as the traffic flow and the tightness of the road, Lou will have that's what he does for a living. I think it's very tight. When we get to the next stage, and I'll get more involved in that. But there wouldn't be no next stage, and I'm not picking on Rob. I think as a merchant, I can't speak for everyone, I think there's a tremendous disconnect with merchants and the town board. Whose ever fault it is, let's end it. Let's figure out how to, either a big email, or, make me in charge of charge of 5 people, let someone else. I don't think there's really not enough connection.
Well, look,
It's the Chamber of Commerce, we want to blame them, or it's a merchant, or it's a
Maybe it's the
town,
merchant,
or
maybe
it's
it's.
all of us.
Maybe a
Well,
merchant,
it's a
maybe a
separate
merchant,
conversation,
maybe a
because
merchant, listen, I have my own
blame.
business too. And as a business owner, besides this beautiful job here, as a business owner, small business owner, I know what it's like. And I have responsibility to stay informed what's going on. So the information's out there. Now, I can hand deliver it to you.
Let's not digress.
But
Let's
you
not
gotta,
digress.
I'm
Let's stick
not
on the issue.
digressing,
Let's stick
but
to
it's
the
easy
issue.
for the merchants, and I'm not just speaking to you two guys. It's always easy for the merchants to say, no transparency in this. Merchants, there's information that I'm putting out there. They gotta take the time and read it. And if they're not reading it, then they have nobody to blame but themselves.
It said discussion Hamlet Improvement Project Study and Recommendations.
Right.
Okay, Laura, my last supervisor report, I talked about how Lou, everything we talked about tonight was talked about how he's studying the turning radiuses, and he's studying making Lower King into a two-way street, and it was on Facebook.
All right,
Okay?
time out.
And when people say, by the way, it's on
Rob.
Facebook, I'm just in the middle talking. When people say it's on Facebook, I should have to learn it from Facebook. Facebook's a perfectly fine way to learn things nowadays. Maybe 10 years ago, it was like not the right way, but you know something? Nowadays, Facebook is a fantastic way to communicate. So if you didn't learn it from the e-newsletter, or if you didn't learn it from going to the website, if you learned it from Facebook, as long as you learned it, that's all that matters.
You're right, but that's,
But
I
that's
apologize, but that's, as a supervisor talking, that's what you're saying. As a merchant, what I'm saying, there is somewhere in between. If Holla had a store, I
Vinny, let me
don't
interrupt
think
you.
she'd agree
Vinny,
with you at all.
Vinny, I'm raising my hand, I'm interrupting you, I got the conch again. Let's have another conversation about it, I'm not putting you off at
No, I
all, I
understand.
swear to you.
Yeah.
Let's move forward with discussing what we're doing next step
Let's
here,
try to
and
make
let's
it
have a
better,
bigger
but
conversation,
whatever
yes,
it takes.
I don't
That's what
disagree.
that's what
We
I'm
can have a
saying.
But you
conversation.
are bringing up a good point, and, you know, the merchants are an integral and vital part of our downtown. And, you know, I don't necessarily think it should be the onus of the town board, because what might be important to you, we may not realize is important to you sometimes. But I do think it's an opportunity to make sure that the leaders of the Chappaqua Millwood Chamber of Commerce should be well-versed on everything going on here, and it's really should be their responsibility. They should be here and making sure they're looking, making sure they're looking at our agendas and notifying all of their constituents that these are coming up, and it may be important, let's say, this discussion is definitely important to you two. It may not be so important to someone in another area of town, but something else may be important to them, and really, maybe we should have a better relationship with the Chamber of Commerce and make sure they're aware of everything, and let the merchants know what's going on next on the agenda. And I'm not dissing you in any way, I actually think it's very important. The reason you have a Chamber of Commerce is to support the merchants in the town and all the businesses. So if there's a disconnect that the merchants are saying is a problem, we have to make sure to correct that.
Vinny, let's sit down this
I'm not
weekend.
blaming Rob.
I'm happy
no,
to
I
take
know.
on, I'm happy
Let's
to
get
take
Lou-
on the
let's- we're
responsibility
digressing.
of talking to the Chamber of Commerce about issues that are before the town
And I
board
understand
that
that
I
this-
feel like are of importance to the merchants. So you and I, Michael, can have that conversation about how to have that be a
Correct, yeah. and-
stream of
and-
communication between
And I am
us.
on the
Okay, I'm
town,
happy to
the
take that
Chamber
on.
of Commerce
Oh, I know.
Board, and I did post about this meeting purposely because I was
Right,
informed
so
by the
that's
town.
really
That was
important.
yesterday.
It was a couple days ago when
That
I
was
found out
yesterday.
about it,
That
yeah.
was when you first found out.
Found out about it.
She-
And
when
I-
she told me and I said
when
something,
Ivy-
you picked it.
Ivy, yeah, and I
It just-
helped and I.
Can we
included
play-
her.
One of the questions I have for you, there's sort of, what I'm gonna call is, like, in the sort of overall evolution of a process. So we've got sort of a technical analysis, like, is this two-way street feasible and does it actually improve things or not? And everyone says whatever, I'm saying I'm keeping an open mind, or not. The answer's either yes, or the answer's either no. It's like what could be supported, what, when you said if it's only 100 cars, it doesn't make a big deal, so it's like not worth the aggravation. But at a certain point in the process, or normally in the development process, there's various stakeholders who've got a vested interest in the outcome. Besides sort of the technical component of it, when you do these kinds of things, is there kind of a process that can be outlined where the stakeholders and their input, positive or negative, can be captured, perhaps incorporated, at least addressed, even if it is rejected, in a more systematic fashion? If so, can you just describe what that would be like?
Sure, and we really employ that on probably 90% of the projects. So in the very beginning stages of the projects, we have, and let me step back, we have different groups. We have a stakeholders group, and then we have, that's made up of people from government, but also people from the business community. They're all stakeholders. And then you have the public, right? So you would go out and you would have a meeting with the stakeholder group and also a meeting with the public and say, here's the project that we're thinking about doing. These are the objectives of the project. Here's the schedule. Here's what we're going to do. Then we actually go back, we look at it from a physical standpoint, from a traffic standpoint, planning, and then we go back to the two groups and say, here's what we have learned, these are the pros and cons, here's our recommendations, and then we have that input and dialogue. We get feedback from them, we go back and we refine both the design and the planning aspects, and then we come back to them and say, here's what we heard from you, here's how we addressed it, and then there's a set of, well, what moves forward and what does not move forward. And so that's normally the process that's taken on every project, like this, like downtowns,
So if
even bigger projects.
So let's say, for example, we've satisfied, and I just want to double check the smart light at the intersection of Greeley, and I want to make sure that the turning radius could work here. In addition, just vet it with Jill going forward, but I support the changes that you proposed in terms of the infrastructure component of it. But if what we're talking about is a proposal, a more thorough proposal, is that process itself, could you make sure that that's clear in the proposal so that when we sort of move
It's more
forward?
detailed, it's more detailed than what we've laid out so far.
Is it more money than what you laid out so far? Because I won't even present that to my board yet. We need to conversate, yeah.
I mean, meetings are expensive.
Well, could you just maybe then do it, because I think that,
You can't imagine why.
yeah, I can't imagine why.
She says at 10:30.
Yeah, but I just think it would be helpful. I mean, if what we feel is, if people aren't being heard, or they feel somehow that the actions of the town are actually destroying long-term stakeholders, then something's got to change.
I'll tell you that we normally have stakeholder groups that are a combination of government and also business community, because they never have the same goals in mind, most of the time. And that's fine, and that works, but as long as there's a dialogue between the two, and each side, or different groups of people, understand what those benefits and detriments are, then there might be something that's in between, or there might not be. And that's why, you look at things that one group may think is broken and needs to be fixed, and another group says, it should just remain the same. And you have to look at it at a broader sense, and that's why the public and that third party really comes in and says, here's what, we think. And now you have the opinion of all the parties.
Okay.
I will say, just based on Jill's reaction to cost, some of these things, we may not need to do, we may need to do, and I'll tell you two things. One is, when we give you, the board, a proposal to do work, it's normally a not-to-exceed number, and it's our guess at what we think we need to spend, knowing that we probably would never do less, but we probably would do more, right? So on the task that we just went through, right, the work that we've just done, not on Chapel Park crossings, but on just the work at the intersection. And I was talking to Bob about this before we started. We most likely won't be able to spend all the money, just because it didn't take us as long as we thought we would. There might be, I think I said $8,000 or $8,000 to $10,000 left in the budget.
That's good.
And so, I don't want to discount any other consulting firms, and I don't want to keep you here longer, but that's just not the way that we do business. We do what we have to do.
Thrilled with your work product. It was just,
We do what we have to do, and we tell you what we're doing, and sometimes we may come back to you and say we need more money, and there might be other times that we say we didn't use all the money. And Nick's looking at me like, why would you do that? No, just kidding. Just kidding.
Oh, no, it's easier, keeps
So-
things clean.
So,
Nice distraction.
it's a distraction, you like that? So, we gave Jill and Bob a number on this. We could definitely go back and look at how we can cut that number
Absolutely.
in certain things
He
that we
hasn't
have
even
here.
seen it, he's saying
But
that.
also know that there's probably eight or 10,000, somewhere between eight to 10, that we're not going to spend on that first task.
And
So,
Lou, if you ever, I don't know if this is maybe not proper, but if you ever want, come by, and I'll show you what my concerns are on those turns and where generally cars are and trucks are.
and that would be part of the process,
Either
for
way,
sure.
My voice isn't gonna change this.
We could take
So
some
whatever happens,
photos, you
happens.
know.
And I think it would help, because, ideally, the solution would end up more parking spaces, less congestion, bringing people down here because it's an easy in, easy out versus what I call it an all lefty town. It's left turns for everything.
Some rights are okay, even in a liberal town.
That's funny. But I think that, to a certain extent, I think if there was a minimum of engagement where their concerns can be expressed, but then your professional expertise can translate that into actual solutions.
But just remember, and I just want to say this, there has to be 3 meeting groups. There has to be
I
3
hear you.
different meetings.
I'm good with that.
Because and just think about it, if I don't do the first meeting and I do the middle meeting, then you basically are saying, here's what we're going to do without getting any information up front.
Totally
And if you
fair.
never have the last meeting, no one ever knows what happened. So.
Totally fair.
Also, just let me just say one thing. It's also about working together, not just with the turning radius and your trucks and your deliveries and things like that. There might be some merit. I mean, I don't want to make assumptions about whether we're moving forward or not. But let's assume we are moving forward for a second. Something that Ivy mentioned, having 15-minute parking spots, like those coveted spots on Lower King Street, or you mentioned it, I've mentioned it in the past also, but having those spots maybe be 15 minutes, so you're reducing it from 16 to 6, but having a 15-minute parking, your customers may still find that same percentage of availability. And if they're popping into the store for 15 minutes and they're popping out, now this is something we don't need to decide right now, but when the merchants and everybody gets together and figures out the needs of your customers and the parking, and maybe have some 15-minute parking, and maybe have some half-an-hour parking, and you figure out what the needs of the customers are, so that you're servicing best, you may find, I know I mentioned this on Facebook, but you may find that having curbside pickup is a huge benefit for you with all these commuters leaving in evening rush hour. If somebody can pull up, not get out of the car, and somebody brings food to them, that could be a monster thing for you. But we have to work together with
I have it
them.
already just pulling right back to the door. I mean, it's available.
I understand that, but it may not be available where it's easy to get out the way, the point is, we could work together to satisfy your
Like, we keep
customers'
working
needs.
together. I don't think again, I'm not blaming the town, but I'm here a long time. And I just feel like, have fun, hope you survive, good luck.
Yeah,
Not to be a bird, there's a lot of merchants that will not be here next year. Whole Foods is killing a lot of people. It's good for a lot, and you're gonna see, Mount Kisco, A&S, there's a lot of guys who will not survive the next year and a half.
Can I ask?
It is what it is, I get it.
Well, unfortunately, change happens,
Yeah, I know,
and
it is, I'm not denying that.
sometimes you gotta change with it, I mean, I'm not
Yes,
talking about you, I'm talking about
I'm trying.
other stores.
Yeah, I know, it's big business is eating the little guys and retail's dying. It is what it is, but as a town board, you don't want a town that's gonna be more and more empty. It's not your fault, but you have to understand that that's out there.
Listen, we're doing what we have to for the town, one of the things we're doing, and it's almost
Yeah,
11,
I appreciate
10:30, changing the zone and get more people
Yeah, I think
living down
that's a
here.
great idea.
We're doing things that other towns are doing to revitalize the towns. It's all part of a big scope. These are little teeny pegs in it, but it's all part of the big thing, and, we're taking steps. And if increasing the traffic flow in downtown is one such step, that all we're doing is studying right now.
I want to just say one thing, I apologize that I'm done. You're 100%, I love the zoning change, but changing that little street to two-way street is a giant deal. It's not a small little thing like some of you guys are making.
I think that's right, and
This town's been here for hundreds of years, and now you want to change a little street into two-way. It's bigger than a little thing.
I actually think it could be a huge change, I do.
Let's have a conversation about the next steps to
And
investigate this
but
going
I
forward.
kind of feel like, I don't have
write
an opinion yet on it, and the reason is that I feel like I have half of an analysis. So I have some drawings, and I know that it's feasible from a paint perspective and from a turning radii perspective, and I thank you, Lou, for giving us that level of analysis, because that's what we requested. But this additional 5 points that you've mapped out here, from my perspective, and especially if we're able to include the participation process, the stakeholder process that you mapped out in those meetings, I can't make an informed decision about whether or not it's a good idea until I know all of these things as well.
That's all, I just don't wanna rush it through, because
No, no,
we're
no,
at
no.
time
No, no,
constraint.
we wouldn't do that.
We're doing infrastructure.
No, but we're not making a decision, but the decision is, we don't stop it dead on its tracks. This is something that we owe it to the community to study, and we're going, and that's what we're doing. But you don't stop it dead in its tracks. That would be, I think, in my opinion, irresponsible of
Yeah, I
us.
think it's incumbent upon us to
Yeah,
investigate it.
I agree with that.
I mean, all we heard tonight really was that if this was a avenue we wanted to go down, it's feasible. That it's not something that is just dead in the water because there's no way it could ever work. Now, so knowing that, we have to decide if we want to move forward, and there's a lot more analysis that would have to be done. It's not, but
Right, Jill, so
At least we know it's a
Jill, what is the
possibility.
next step?
So what I would like is direction
Segue.
from the board as to whether or not to ask Lou to take and revise his
Financials? Yes.
Yeah,
his
Lou, could
his
you put a
proposal to
proposal
take
that
and
would work?
include.
Recognizing now how
yeah.
people feel.
No, include the outreach,
Understanding that
at
we
least
have
the
money
3 months.
left in the budget from the already approved scope of work.
Right.
And understanding the sort of relative ballpark that he's given us.
I
for
will share that with the
These
board.
5 points plus
Yes.
the process.
And
That-
who's going to sharpen his
that-
pencil and come
right.
back to me with something fabulous.
Mike, you had a question?
I had a
Okay.
question. So I was trying to understand the intention here. Is it the intention for people coming to pick up people at the train, that they would go down Lower King, pick up someone at the train, and then circle back and go back up King? Or would they be forced to go up? I'm not saying that we need an answer, but I'm trying to understand if that's,
You know, I can only tell you from my personal perspective, people I've spoken to who live on my side of town, coming down King Street, if I had access and could get in and out and not have to circumvent the entire train station, I'd be a lot more inclined to park my car and go and do something. As I said, I'm a regular at Villarena. It's not a place I go to a bunch. If I can't park, sometimes I just keep on going and go out because I can't park.
Well, you're asking-
It's all left.
Yeah, I mean, I think
And
all
this
of us on that side
Bell,
are nodding.
you have Bell traffic, you have train traffic, you have.
but that's a different question than I was asking, Jeremy. I agree with you. I don't park on Lower King.
I think the
park on-
idea-
I park on
There's
Greeley.
two, Michael, I don't know that anyone's necessarily thinking of it in terms of somebody picking up somebody at the train, because you're already there, you might as well just go out over there. I think it's more actually encouraging people who want to go down Lower King. Well, it's two things. First, encouraging people who want to go down Lower King to actually shop, that if they're not gonna have to get stuck not even going toward the train station, they don't have to get stuck, they can actually park and turn around and come back out after shopping and doing what they have to do. And then encouraging people who are already at the train station to potentially go that way, both to alleviate traffic and then hopefully to encourage them to also want to stop to pick up dinner or gifts or whatever it may be and head out that way rather than getting stuck, having to go out, come around, and then go out again.
That's only for pickups, because if you're parked in the back lot, you're not gonna be allowed to do that
Yes,
anyway.
Yeah, but
Lou, can Lou go home?
Not in the
Can
back.
Lou go
Go
home?
home. Yes.
Bob, go home.
Understand the traffic pattern.
Okay, right.
Bob, thank you. Lou,
Anyways, I
thank you.
just want to say thank you guys for stopping because it added to the conversation. Coming to the
Tremendously
meeting
so.
because it added to the conversation. It was constructive.
100%.
It was just preliminary, like,
Yeah.
I don't want you guys to walk out of here thinking that this is happening.
Now preliminary becomes, it's almost there, becomes, sorry you missed the boat.
No.
Come on, it's
Understood.
what it is, that's all. I'm just, listen, your giant supervisor report, I don't think anyone reads it, don't take it personal. It's a lot of stuff.
I don't.
But Vinny,
I don't.
I'll be honest.
I read it.
I'll be honest with you, a lot of people do. And I'm not just saying that because I get a lot of responses from it.
Yeah, it's a lot of stuff. I don't know, maybe I gotta reach out to one of you guys and give you a free steak and you guys.
Can't do that. We can't take a free steak.
I don't know, a glass of wine might
Ah, you
work.
can't, can't do that.
$5. $5.
$5 wine,
Came in the store
$5
and she
steak.
dumped yesterday, she thought.
Thank you. Lou, thank you. Bob, thank you. Lieutenant Carroll, thank you. Night, guys.
Right.
All right, good night.
Thank you.
Resolutions?
All right, I move to approve the payment of claims amount of $979,730.40. Listed on the summary pre-check writing report and detailed voucher details report, all dated January 29, 2019. Checks will be issued amount to each claimant listed on Wednesday, January 30th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I move to authorize the hiring of Robert Patino Jr. in the position of labor with the Recreation and Parks Department at an annual salary of $47,182.43 effective February 4th this year.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I move to authorize the hire of Brian Barrett to the position of part-time recreation attendant with the Recreation and Parks Department to assist with the basketball program as well as special events at an hourly rate of $12 per hour effective January 22nd of this year.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I move to appoint Nanes to the substantial SAB for a term of 5 years effective January 20, 2019.
He was here for most of the
He
meeting.
was here. He was here.
All in favor? Aye. Yeah, he was here.
That's right, we did that
This-
already.
Number 5,
We did number 5.
Did 5, yep.
I move to withdraw a bid awarded to Expanded Supply Products, Inc. for items listed below, which were awarded by Town Board Resolution dated December 17, 2018, as follows.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I thought you were gonna read this, folks.
No. I move toward the bid of DPW 2018-06 water maintenance materials, specific items listed below to Schmitz Wholesale, Inc., 150 Jefferson Street, P.O. Box 5100, Monticello, New York. Items requested to award Schmitz Wholesale, Inc. are as follows and reflected therein.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I move to approve 2 officers to attend the conflict management for law enforcement contact professional in Chino, California. On March 4th, 2017, and it ends on the 7th. The cost of the training will be paid through the grant from the Collaborative Reform Initiative Technical Assistance Center.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. I move to set a public hearing regarding a request for waiver of permitted and regulated construction activities pursuant to the noise ordinance for Saturday. The public hearing will be held on Tuesday, February 12th of this year at 7 p.m. in the Assembly Room of Newcastle Town Hall, located right here in Randall, 2000 South Greeley Avenue, Chappaqua, New York.
Wait, just give me 2
All in
seconds.
favor?
Wait.
Aye.
Wait, she's saying wait.
I'm saying
Literally
wait,
saying-
just give me 2 seconds, sorry.
I didn't say Simon Says.
So Mike Kaplowitz is coming to speak to the board at 7, so do we want to make this just for 7:30?
So moved.
Okay, great, thank you.
Second.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
I move to adjourn.
Don't we have payment of claims somewhere?
That was
We did it first.
Right.
Thank you.
That it? Nothing
Yeah, my
else?
eyes on second.
No, that's it. Your motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.